Just the echo we got to work out.
The echo?
There's just a small echo. I just want everybody at home to be able to hear.
Anna, you're on mute.
I got the room with the mini fridge and all the Diet Cokes, so you guys just stay there with your echo. I got the good one.
You know, if we split up, then we don't have to wear masks. You know.
You got what? Right. Probably don't have to wear one in here. We're so far apart.
You don't have to wear one, Shannon. You're not going to offend me.
I don't want you to infect me.
She's already had it.
I haven't. For crying out
You
loud.
have to.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, we're on live and we're streaming on YouTube, on the village's webpage, and through the Zoom platform.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, everybody. This is the Village Council for our first meeting in the council chambers of the new year. It's January 12th, 2001. And so, what is it, just about 6 p.m.? And I want to call the meeting to order. Mr. Clerk, will you call the roll of the members?
Councilmember Abbott?
Here.
Councilmember Del Prado?
Here.
Councilmember Hokemer?
Here,
Vice Mayor Kraft?
Here.
Mayor Corradino?
Here.
Quorum is present, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll start. I'm not going to stand up because you'll see my stomach. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, with that, we have a full slate this evening. We have a consent agenda we should dispense with relatively quickly, and then a handful of presentations. Do we have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Anybody want to pull anything from the consent agenda? Seeing none, Mr. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Seeing none, the consent agenda passes. We'll go to the agenda and order of business. We have the special presentations that we like to go to. I was wanted to move up in line the resolution letter A, which is tab 10, our resolution reconfirming our support for the bus rapid transit. Does anybody mind if we did that right after the presentations?
To me.
Okay, seeing none, and the reason why we're blessed tonight to have our County Commissioner Raquel Regalado with us, and if she wants to stick around, she can listen to that conversation. And then we're having a presentation from Miss Alice Bravo, the Director of Public Works Department for Miami-Dade County on the BRT. So with that, is Commissioner Regalado in the?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the commissioner is on with you.
Hi, how are you
Wonderful.
guys?
Great, Commissioner. How are you? Thank you for being here tonight. Or being wherever you are tonight. We really appreciate you.
I'm with you. I chose Pinecrest Garden as my background, so I figured you guys would recognize. Yeah, so there you go. I can't be physically with you because I also have a Key Biscayne meeting today, so it is physically impossible to be in both at the same time, but it is virtually possible. So there's like a feedback there. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, perfect. All right. I actually spoke to Alice.
Lower that?
Yeah, it sounds.
Let's listen to Shannon.
Yeah, I hear everything like twice. Now it's gone. All right. So I actually spoke to Alice, and I'm going to speak to you about a few things that she's going to be talking to you about just to clear things up because there was a little. Now you can't hear me? Now I hear myself again.
We're good?
We're good? All right. Okay, we'll try again. So I spoke to Alice about the BRT, and I'm actually at the end of this going to speak a little bit to you guys about the item that I brought to the TPO and sort of my interest in the BRT. But first and foremost, as you guys know, I emailed you our septic to sewer reports, and I'm actually having what WASA has delivered to you all. I've actually put in for legislation on implementation of those reports, but there is a hold by another commissioner. So now we got to work all that out. But the good news is that this week, the mayor named Irela Bargen as our chief bay officer, and this will allow us someone to work with directly on these issues. So we're very excited about it. I've also made a request from WASA and our legal for everything and anything that has to do with the Pinecrest water issue. So two separate issues, right? We have septic to sewer. We know we have to deal with that, but we also have the water issue. And they provided me with a report from 2016 and kind of everything that's been done at the county level so that I can report back to you guys. I'm actually meeting with Ed Marquez on what can be done. And one of the things we're doing on septic to sewer is going to be to change the language in the bond financing for WASA. And that might actually help us with the water issue too, because they had a restriction on there that would not allow them to bring on new users. And now we're looking at changing that. So it might be an opportunity to kill two birds with one stone. So we're really excited about it. And as soon as we get, something in writing from finance and budget and legal, we'll get back to you on it. So that issue is not really held up by the other members of the county commission. So I hope to get back to you with that as soon as possible. On the septic to sewer, a little bit more complicated because many of us more are involved. And that's probably going to happen in February. We have a meeting now, January 20th, that has a very, very full agenda. I'm actually bringing an agenda item that I hope that I can take to you all afterwards. And that has to do with an inclusion program around in several county departments, libraries, parks, transit, fire, and police for neurodivergent children and adults. We're very excited about it. So I'll send you all the details. We're actually partnering with NSU Card, and the idea is to roll out in April. And we're going to have social stories and signage across the entire county. And I would love to have the village of Pinecrest participate. Your library is on the list of sites that we're going to be working on. And we're very excited about doing something that's really thoughtful. And that, can allow us to invite people with disabilities into public spaces for April instead of just taking a trite picture. So I will keep you guys posted on that. We're all very excited. The transit piece is going to be very interesting. Transit and mobility is so important for adults with disabilities. And this is going to allow us to provide them with the tools and the signage that they need in order to feel comfortable in Miami-Dade transit. So that's one of the things we're working on. We're also bringing a very interesting piece on eviction data. This is going to be useful now as we deal with the eviction moratorium. We're waiting for information on two things. The governor finally accepted today the stimulus money for rental assistance. So now that he accepted it in Tallahassee today, we didn't get any details. We're hoping to have some before the end of the week as to how that's going to be allocated to the counties. So we'll let you guys know what the plan is for rental assistance. We do have over $1 billion, but one of the things that we're seeing is that it appears that it is limited to the CDC order, which is going to expire January 31st. So I'm bringing a board item that moving forward and starting this month, the clerk of the court is going to provide eviction information on residential and commercial to the Auditor General, and he's going to prepare a report. He's also going to get data from the sheriff as to how many writs of possessions are waiting to be executed or have been executed. And that data is going to be provided in a report to the county commission and to the homeless trust. And the idea is that 4 days from the end of the month, we're going to be able to look at this data and kind of figure out what comes next. We're also doing other pieces of it that have to do with foreclosures and have to do with commercials. And the idea is that moving forward, the county commission would be making a lot of these decisions when it comes to rental allocation funds, and also when it comes to affordable housing and programming based on data. Right? We need the data. The clerk has the data, and this is really one in several items that I'm bringing to give us that data. And I'm happy to share it with you all because it is broken down by region. So we will be providing you with the numbers for your region. Do with it what you like. But I think it's useful so that we know kind of where we are. They're also very good predictors of what's going to happen in our economy. Right now, we're dealing with a pandemic and it's a little outside of the normal, but the idea is that this will be provided on a monthly basis to the county commission, and then we will be providing it to you all so that you can have access to that. And then there are also small business loans that the PPP has been opened up. So we're going to be getting a report on that on January 20th. And we're looking forward to that. And we'll also keep you posted. Anything that we receive in terms of programming, we'll let you know. I can tell you that the county commission wants to do something that's a lot more comprehensive and a lot more inclusive. So hopefully it won't be like what happened with the CARES Act. So if you guys have any questions, and then I'll do the BRT real quick.
Great, thank you very much. We really, and all the time you've taken with us thus far. It's only been a couple of months, and I think I've spoken to you more than many of our previous county commissioners, so it's greatly appreciated. Does anybody have questions for the commissioner?
No, I'd just like to say thank you so much for coming and talking to us. And it sounds like you're off to a rocking and rolling start. If we're measuring people's effectiveness by how much movement they're making in the county in the first 30 days, I would say you're probably top 2, perhaps, in the history of Miami-Dade County. We really do appreciate your attention to the water situation in Pinecrest. We know that it's unique to our city, and it's so difficult on the county commission to get traction on issues which aren't countywide and are more municipal specific. So your leadership on that will be really beneficial to our residents. And we really acknowledge that it takes up a huge chunk of bandwidth and affects only a small part of your constituency. So we appreciate it and thank you.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And Anna, honestly, it's been a long time. So we hope to get it done and really prove to you guys that county government can work and it can be responsive. So we're excited about getting it done as soon as possible. We're also going to be in February rolling out a tremendous program that has to do with parks in District 7. So we'll keep you posted. It has to do with bike trails, walking trails, and parks. So you're going to hear a lot about connectivity. I know you guys feel as strongly about parks and walkability and connectivity as I do. We're blessed to live in a district that has the Commodore Trail, the Ludlam Trail, Old Cutler. I mean, it's just amazing. Now, obviously, we have the Underline, and we're working on phase 2 and phase 3 with Meg. And by the way, Meg is my appointee to the CITT. So the CITT will finally have someone that can speak to walkability and bikeability. So I'm very excited that she accepted that, and we'll keep you guys posted on everything that we're planning on that end. Cool. So if you guys don't have any other questions, really quick on the BRT, my interest in the BRT had to do with the intersections. I don't subscribe to this idea that in order to get people on public transit, you have to make it utterly impossible for them to ride their cars. I know that some people think that that's necessary. I disagree, especially when it's around our neighborhoods. If we're going to, as a county, provide these transit projects and then increase density around these transit projects, as someone who lives around a transit hub, I think we should also have a conversation about the intersections and about congestion and about creating a baseline. So that's what this was about. And when we did a little bit of research, we found that towards the end of the BRT process, and Alice will speak to this too, and she was actually supportive of the item that I brought to the TPO, there was an MOU that was signed with FDOT that created a baseline and different things that the people who lived on that street, if it was owned by the state, could do if the congestion got beyond what FDOT determined with the traffic study to be unacceptable. The problem is that did not exist for the other intersections that were county owned. So the item that I brought to the county commission that was a lot misunderstood in its final version was to really provide equity, right? To ensure that whatever we were doing in the state-owned intersections was also being done in the county-owned intersections, and that the county had some information as to the right-of-ways and what could be done to alleviate congestion. So that's the information that we're waiting for the TPO to provide us with, so that then we can make an assessment We hope that the BRT will not create traffic congestion, but if it does, I don't want the neighbors around it to have to spend 3 years calling the county commission office, right? I want to establish a plan so that when it gets to a certain point, we can act as quickly as possible. So it really is about future-proofing the intersections, and it's something that I think we should do around all our major transit projects. So that's sort of where my item was at and what I took to the TPO. So it's a little different than what people originally thought, but there you have it, and happy to answer any questions that you have on that item and what we're expecting in the next few weeks from the TPO.
I have a couple of questions about that. So what are you thinking? I mean, I understand that those lights at those intersections are very close together, and it makes it hard for people across east and west. And that's made worse, particularly when you start to synchronize the signals on US 1 and prioritize that north-south flow, and will likely even get worse once the busway or the rapid transit comes in, because it's at the street level, not a bridge or anything like that, and it'll have signal priority. So east-west movement is likely only to get worse. What do you think about building bridges to separate the traffic?
Well, we can't, right. So I originally went back, as you know, Joe, because we talked about it, to the MDX plan of the bridges, because I thought they were very thoughtful. And I thought that the idea of, a cut and cover would also help. Unfortunately, the way that the BRT was designed and where they placed it, that can't be done. I think there's 2 intersections where it could be, like a cut and cover could be done, but the majority of the intersections, that's just not a possibility. So that's why we need to look at the right of ways and if we have the ability to extend the intersections, right? Can we make the intersections bigger? And that's where we are right now. We really can't even answer the question until we look at the data, and each intersection is so uniquely different. And that's why I thought at the end of the day, it was an item that was better suited for the TPO, because they're the ones that can provide us with that detail, and then we can all look at it and think, well, moving forward, what do we want to do? And what do we have to do with the county? Because the county is the one that, at least with the FDOT MOU, has committed to fixing it. So that you guys know, the MOU is very interesting, and we're happy to send it to you. But the county only has 10 days to figure out the synchronization. And if that doesn't work, then they have to move, to provide FDOT with a plan for widening the intersection. So we're already tethered to that. And I just want to see what's available in those intersections, what's available in the other intersections, because the last thing we want to do is create congestion in county streets because you have this going on in state streets. So it's complicated. I think, the first question is always, what's available and what can we do? And then we'll take it from there. But it is a concern. And look, I want this project to be successful. I think we all want it to be successful. And the last thing we want is for people, to hate transit projects that come to their neighborhood. So working on it. We'll get back to you guys as soon as we have the data. And I know that Alice is going to talk about what's happening at the county. I've also been talking to a few stakeholders, and I know that you guys want to keep the BRT. I think it's one of these situations where we need to have a conversation at the county level with the new commissioners, so everybody can kind of air out what their deal is, and then talk about the future. And if this is something that can be done like this way and then transitioned into something else. And I think that's really where we'll end up. But at the end of the day, the pandemic has hit transit hard. And Alice can talk to you guys about that. So really not the moment to be shifting gears, but we'll see what happens.
Thank you. I think you're on the right path on the intersections. Any other questions for our county commissioner? Seeing none, Commissioner, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
We very much appreciate it.
Bye, guys. It's a pleasure.
Bye,
Have a wonderful day. And thank you for your service to the residents of Pinecrest.
Thank you.
Thank you for you. Okay, that concludes that presentation. That was great. I'm glad she was here with us. Guido, is Miss Bravo in the building or the virtual building?
There she is.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. How are you?
Great. How's everybody?
Very good. Hi, Andrew. I see you out there. Miss Bravo has been going around and making presentations relative to the BRT. I believe this is part of your normal presentation schedule, but I just happened to watch her presentation to Palmetto Bay last week, and I thought it was excellent. And we had another issue that we'll be discussing right after this. So I asked if she would come and give us this presentation. I believe you're also meeting with people on a one-on-one basis. So this may be repetitive for some people. So with that, take it away, and thank you for being here.
All right. Well, great to be with all of you. Alice Bravo, Director of Transportation and Public Works for Miami-Dade County. And I'm here to talk to you about the South Corridor project, the South Dade Transitway. And of course, in 2016, we created the SMART plan, the Strategic Miami Area Rapid Transit Plan, that had 6 different corridors. I'm happy to say that we have been very successful with the SMART plan. 5 of those 6 corridors have reached major project milestones. Of course, the South Corridor being the most advanced of those. But I'll give you a quick overview. The South Corridor will hopefully start construction very soon. The Beach Corridor has resulted in a procurement and the execution of an interim agreement, which will lead hopefully to a full P3 concession agreement. The North Corridor is under procurement for an interim agreement. The East-West Corridor, the locally preferred alternative for that was approved in October. The 5th corridor is the Northeast Corridor, where we have negotiations ongoing with Brightline. So as far as the SMART plan goes, we are very successful. The last corridor is the Kendall Corridor, which FDOT is handling and should be moving forward soon. But if we can go to the next slide. What we're here to talk to you about tonight is the South Corridor. And we're going to give you an overview and talk about some of the outreach activities that we're doing. Last year, we were very fortunate. We executed our grants. We executed a grant for $100 million from the state of Florida through the FDOT. And we also executed the grant for $100 million of federal funding from the Federal Transit Administration. So we decided that now that we were moving from the study phase to the project implementation phase, it was important we continue our public outreach. And we want the public excited about this project because we think it's really, really beneficial. And I want to say that federal grant, the $100 million from FTA through the Small Starts program, that's the first time Miami-Dade County receives a corridor grant in over 20 years. So this is a huge accomplishment for our community, and that project moved forward in record time. It was 2 years from the time the TPO selected Bus Rapid Transit as the locally preferred alternative to when we executed the grant agreement with the FTA. And I'll tell you, 10 years ago, we were not in good shape with the FTA. 5 years ago, we were not in good shape with the FTA. We had our grant suspended. They were curious when we came up with the SMART plan. They weren't thinking it was going to go anywhere. And now they're taking us very seriously because we've gone through the studies on each corridor and we're following their process. And I think that was rewarded with how quickly this grant for the South Corridor was approved for us.
Alice, may I interrupt?
Sure.
Why weren't we in such good standing with the FTA during those times?
Well, I think if you look back to like 2008, 2009, the county finances for transit were not stable. At that time, we had the North Corridor project that was moving forward, and it was downgraded from medium to medium low. So the FTA rates your projects once you go into either the Small Starts or the New Starts. The New Starts process, that's for projects over $300 million. It's complex, it has multiple steps, and you're in it for several years, like 5 years, if you're lucky. And they re-rate your project every year, and part of that rating is the financial wherewithal of the county. So like around 2008, 2009, that North Corridor project was being downgraded from medium to medium low. The county had to withdraw that project. The transit budget was unstable. And then a few years later, the federal grants to the county were suspended. There were a number of federal grants we had to write off. So when we came up with the SMART plan, the FTA, looked at us like, really? You guys have been talking about these transit projects for a long time. And when we started the studies and we showed them that we were following the process, we weren't just, running up there and demanding money for this or that. They have taken us very seriously. They have been very helpful, very cooperative, helped us through the process on all these corridors. And the reward was this BRT grant in very short time compared to other projects across the country. Thank you. So, we think this project provides a lot of benefits for the community. We want the public to be aware it's coming. We want them to get excited about it and understand what it is and how it benefits them. So next. So we to continue this outreach, we're doing anything and everything we can think of, and we certainly want the Pinecrest's input as to how we continue doing this. So we're going to park and rides, we're going to malls, community meetings, doing presentations, anywhere you want us to go, business groups, homeowners associations, we're available to go wherever you all recommend that we go to make sure the public knows that we're making this big investment in the community. Next. So the South Corridor begins at Dadeland, where the Metrorail ends, and runs all the way down to Florida City. So it's a 20-mile stretch. And we go through 5 municipalities, a village of Pinecrest at the north end, and a lot of unincorporated Dick County along the way. So the idea is to create a rapid transit system extension of the Metrorail system. Now, when the People's Transportation Plan was approved, when it referenced the South Corridor, it said that a study had to be conducted to determine the appropriate mode for this corridor. And so there have been various studies done for this corridor in 2006, and it was updated in 2015, and then our study that culminated in 2018, and all three yielded bus rapid transit as the recommendation. And I'm gonna show you why this is a great project. Next. So obviously Village of Pinecrest, stretching from roughly 878 to 136th Street. This whole project, the 20-mile stretch, is going to have 14 premium stations. So these are the rapid transit stations that are nothing like what's out there today. And 3 of them are in or around Pinecrest. Next. So here's some renderings of the station. Behind me, my virtual background, you can see the rendering that we used during the study phase. And the public liked these renderings. The stations are iconic. They're architecturally significant. They represent a permanent investment in the community, unlike the canopies that are out there today. And these stations are designed to maximize rider comfort, and they have all the same amenities that they would have if they were a train station. And so the benefits of the project include time savings, and this bus rapid transit system provides the same time savings as a train would. What's the difference? That bus rapid transit, with all the same benefits, all the same amenities, can be done for about 1/4 or 1/5 of the price of rail. So that means going through the small starts process, less than $300 million, which is much quicker with the FTA, and a certainty of project implementation right now, versus rail, which goes to the new starts process, which is long and speculative. And there are lots and lots of projects across the country that have gotten a medium rating, but haven't gotten the funding because FTA simply does not have enough funding to go around. So we want this project to be recognizable. And what's important is that we know South Dade is going to continue to grow, and population density will grow, and ridership demand will grow. And these stations are being designed to be expandable and modified to suit rail in the future once the right level of demand is there. Now, each station has different features that can be tailored to the local community. And that's also where we want Pinecrest feedback, so that the stations in and around Pinecrest can have that flavor. Next. So BRT provides a lot of flexibility. We can have very flexible and rapid service. And like I said, we have all the amenities as if it was rail. So on the side streets, we actually have gate arms and signals that come down to ensure that with transit signal preemption, every bus is going to get through with a green light on the busway and not have to stop. So that's how we get the time savings as a train, because it functions like a train and every intersection has to stop to let the vehicle through. So we have our 14 premium stations that, as you can see, are completely protected from the elements. There's an air-conditioned vestibule in the center. There's large fans in the station for those who are not in the vestibule. The other 16 existing stations on the transitway that are not upgraded will be rehabbed and refurbished so that they're completely modernized with next time arrival, security cameras, and other elements. So these gate arms and the smart signal technology for transit signal preemption is being installed on all 46 intersections along the corridor. And to Commissioner Regalado's credit, she focused on the same thing the Florida Department of Transportation focused on, is that we don't want this wonderful transit project to have any negative impacts on the side streets and that traffic. So Florida Department of Transportation spent quite some time with us, and we did lots and lots of traffic analysis to demonstrate that this corridor would not have a negative impact. And of course, we're rehabilitating the existing shared use path along the corridor. Next. So a little bit about the stations. What makes rapid transit rapid? Well, all the features you see in a train station. You have a level board. Impacted during a storm. And like I mentioned, these stations were designed to be expandable the day that we consider the benefits are comparable to rail. So you have the time savings and you have the reliability, and you actually have more flexibility with bus rapid transit that you have with rail. Because as you saw, the stations, you have the ability for one vehicle to pass another. So we could, on top of these stations, we could create more layered express service. And so that is very helpful. And if you don't mind, I'm gonna check my Wi-Fi 1 second here. Can everybody hear me? Yeah?
We can hear you right now, but before you were coming in and out, Alice, that's why I texted you.
It's a little choppy, but we got you.
Okay. So you have more flexibility and more reliability with this. Obviously, when a train breaks down, it impacts the entire system. Here, if a bus rapid transit vehicle has an issue, it can be pulled off to the side. So, you know, during the study phase that led to the recommendation in 2018, we saw one of the FTA factors is called cost effectiveness. So basically, benefit to cost ratio, how much are you spending for the projected ridership? Bus rapid transit received a high rating, and now rail received a medium low rating. You need about 25%, 30% more trips than what the modeling predicted to even get to a medium rating for rail. So the numbers just weren't there. And we also looked at how much funding was available for the entire SMART plan, all 6 corridors. And at the time, rail on this corridor would have consumed about 3/4 of all available SMART plan funding for this one corridor, while bus rapid transit consumed 12%, leaving 80-something% for the other 5 corridors. So the capital cost is 1/5 of rail for bus rapid transit, and the O&M is about 1/4. And as you can see, in 2018, we said we'd be able to start service in 3 to 4 years. Now we're in 2020, and we do plan to start service at the beginning of 2023. So construction is faster, and this service will be available to people right away. Okay, next. So as I mentioned, you have the ability for passing. So our initial service will have an express vehicle that hits these 14 premium stations. There'll be other routes that hit all the intermediate stations. But as demand grows, you could layer additional express routes that maybe only hit 3 or 4 stations and go straight to and from Dadeland to different areas. And you can, because of the lower cost of bus rapid transit, you could have more vehicles and more frequent service than you could with rail. Next. So we talked about the ability to expand to the future. So the station being designed today would merely be lengthened in the future if converted to rail. So your platform would be higher. We'd build up on that platform we have, and we'd make the whole station longer. So that way, you could consider this project as a down payment towards rail, because you're getting the gate and signal infrastructure, you're getting a good chunk of your station built, and it's a step forward. And it shows the FTA that we made the wise decision. We followed the numbers, the cost effectiveness, and we're ready to grow in the future when it makes sense. Next. So we talked a little bit about some of these features. I think an important feature to note is that we're procuring electric buses for this service. If you've been next to an electric bus, you'd never know it because it's completely quiet. I've stood next to an electric bus with the motor compartment open, it's running, and you don't hear a thing. As opposed to rail, for any type of rail project, the FTA makes you do a higher category of environmental study because of noise and vibration and all the complaints that brings. And if you've been in an office near the Metrorail, you've heard the screeching of the wheels, etc. So this will be completely quiet. And again, we have all the features of rail, and we'll have the time savings of rail. We'll have branding. And again, when we showed these concepts and these renderings to the community during the study phase, it was very well received. Next. Aside from the $100 million of federal funding and the $100 million of state funding that we received for this project, we also received a $10 million build grant that's being used towards this park and ride feature that we're going to build at 168th Street. So this is going to be a multi-level garage, 670 spaces that will actually straddle over the transit way, so that people that park in the garage can take escalators or elevators straight down into the center platform. So, you know, this will have all these amenities, kiss and ride, public restrooms, bicycle storage. And the idea is, again, as demand grows and we can do this, hopefully we could do this at other stations along the corridor. Next. So as I mentioned, the other stations that do not get upgraded to premium stations will get full rehabs. So paint, repairs, etc. We're adding the ticket vending machines, bike racks, benches, upgrading the lighting, security cameras, and these stations will get a 25-foot pylon so that they're also more identifiable. Next. So we talked about what the service would look like. So there would be service that runs all along the stations, and then the express service that hits the 14 premium stations and runs between Florida City and Dadeland. And in the future, as there's more demand, you could layer even more express routes on top of that. And there's flexibility for all the municipalities along the corridor to layer service on there. Next. So this project was a small start. We were right at the limit, $300 million, and it was a full partnership. We're contributing $100 million from the state, $100 million from the federal. And as I mentioned, that $100 million federal, that's the first corridor grant that Dade County receives in over 20 years. And some have asked, well, what if we scrap this and just go with rail? Well, then all this funding from the state and the federal government goes away. They will reallocate it to other projects as we start a brand new process to pursue funding for rail under a different program, which is the New Starts for projects over 300 million. So next. So our study concluded with the TPO selecting bus rapid transit back in August of 2018. In May of last year, 2020, the FTA confirmed that we had gotten a high overall rating on the project and that we were receiving funds for the bus rapid transit project. We didn't waste any time. While we were going through that FTA funding process, we were also procuring a design build contract. So in September at the County Commission, we had two items, one to award the design build contract and one to execute the federal grant for the federal $100 million. So right now, we're in the process of approving a construction, engineering, and inspection contract that will supervise the design build work. And as soon as we have that, we'll issue a notice to proceed to the design build team so that we can build this and begin revenue service by the beginning of 2023. So just to recap, bus rapid transit, it's a hit. Why is it a hit all over the world and gaining momentum in the US? Because it's flexible, it's less expensive, it's actually implementable because it's affordable. And so here we are on the cusp of breaking ground on this exciting project. And it's gonna help us build ridership and we'll build the foundation for when we're ready to transform to rail in the future.
Great, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Bravo relative to the BRT presentation?
What would be the impediment to your timeline becoming reality? What are the operational and realistic impediments to this coming true?
Well, once we issue the notice to proceed, our design build contractor, they've already started looking at the permitting and whatever they need to do to implement. But for weather delays or unforeseen conditions, we're expecting this to move forward in this timeline. And so basically, we're expecting to move forward with 2023.
Fantastic.
Any other questions?
Yeah, sorry if you mentioned this, there's a lot of information, but will the build out affect any of the current service?
No, that's another benefit. Since the station footprints are wider than the existing transit way, we're going to build from the outside in, and that way we can maintain service.
I mean, do you have an estimate on how long it would take, for example, just hypothetically, from Dadeland Station to the end in Florida City?
Our estimation, that would be about 35 to 40 minutes.
Wow.
Alice, the question is, how does that relate to the rail travel time, the projected rail travel time?
Pretty much the same.
Pretty much the same. So it's as fast from Florida City to Dadeland is rail, but it's less than a third of the cost, less than a third of the cost.
Like a fifth of the capital cost and a fourth of the O&M cost. And with the flexibility that you can layer additional express service.
And what is that current time with the bus system as it is now? Do you know?
It's about 50 minutes, 55 minutes. We've improved it with the transit signal priority that we have, but transit signal priority basically tries to turn the light green as often as possible. But now we're moving to full preemption. The light will turn green for these vehicles and the gate arms will come down.
So we would cut the travel time in half, spending $300 million, or cut the travel time in half, spending $1.5 billion.
Right.
And it's less expensive for the consumer, for the rider.
Well, this will fall under our county pass program. So usually our riders have the monthly pass. What it impacts is, like I mentioned before, the new starts process, when projects are more than $300 million, it's a lengthy process, and it's basically meant to make sure that your project meets muster in every possible way, because they have so many cities applying and they don't have enough funding to go around. So it's meant to vet out projects. And so there are projects that get the medium rating, but don't receive the funding because not enough funding has been appropriated by Congress, et cetera. So you could go through this lengthy process and not necessarily receive the funds to implement the project.
So when you say a project that you can't even be considered until you get a medium ranking, the rail doesn't get a medium ranking, so it can't be considered. So even if we wanted to submit for rail, they would throw the application out. Even if it were to get a medium ranking, there's no guarantee to funding because there will be projects in front of it, likely with medium, high, and high rankings. And it may take you a decade to find out you've lost.
Right. So the cost effectiveness is one of several factors that they use in the ranking. We know that that would get a medium low. We know that the land use and the density is not strong. The financial requirements of the county that they expect are much higher for a new start than a small start. They make you have all these different financial reserves. So yes, most likely this would not receive a medium rating.
If I can ask a more Pinecrest specific question, the two Pinecrest stations are at 104th Street and 136th Street. And
Right.
104th Street has always struck me as an odd spot to put the station. Why, given the fact that we have the only commercial density that we have in Pinecrest is farther south around 112th, 117th Street, do we not have a station closer to central Pinecrest?
Well, I'd have to go back and see how that was arrived at. We worked very closely with RER, the planning arm of the county. And I think there were already areas that had urban center designations. And we worked with the TPO that basically did a land use evaluation parallel to our study.
And that's not just on our side of US 1, but on the west side of US 1 as well, correct?
Correct.
Right. Makes perfect sense. Thank you.
But again, there's nothing to say that you couldn't consider adding something like that in the future.
I have another quick question. Could you please speak to the long-term maintenance costs of BRT versus rail?
Right. So the long-term cost, the O&M, is about 1/4 for BRT as it is for rail. So again, when I talked about the county 40-year pro forma for the entire SMART plan, rail would have consumed 75% of that 40-year pro forma. Because of course, capital cost is one-time shot. You could receive federal and state funding for capital, but O&M, nobody helps you with O&M, and it's the gift that keeps on giving. So that's why, it's so much more dramatic, the impact to that SMART plan pro forma, because the O&M is so much higher.
Thank you.
And, a great thing in moving forward, like I said, we didn't always have this in good standing with the FTA. Now we are. We've cleaned up all the issues with regards to the grants and the regular funding. They're proud that we're going through the process. They actually do a risk assessment before they finally award one of these grants to you. That includes, financial risk, political risk, everything. Because the one thing that keeps the FTA up at night is that they don't want to award one of these grants and not have the project move forward. That's what they lose sleep over. So that's why they do this risk assessment. That's why they're so thorough on the vetting and the NEPA process and all the analysis to make sure that basically they don't have egg on their face, that they awarded a grant and then have to take it back. And that has happened. Fort Lauderdale had a small starts grant for a streetcar project. It took a long time to actually move to implementation. And by then there were other ideas, and Fort Lauderdale thought they could use the money in a different way. And the FTA and the state both said, nope, that grant was for that purpose. You're not doing that project. We're taking our money back and putting it somewhere else. So delivering this project and within the prescribed time frame helps us continue building that relationship with the FTA and helps us in the pursuit of other funding for other corridors.
Thank you. Any final questions? Alice, thank you very much for being here. I know you weren't scheduled to, but it was great. This presentation has a ton of information. It's very useful to us. and helps everybody make better decisions. And thanks for everything you've done at the county. I know you might be moving on soon, so you'll be missed here, but I know you'll be back in a different capacity.
I'll be around. I'm not leaving town.
We'll see you. We'll see
Thank
you
you.
around.
Good
the
luck.
park.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so if it's now that she's done, why don't we move up? Let's not let the BRT resolution sit. Let's bring that up. So we're going to bring up resolution A, and that's tab 10, expressing support for the BRT system. Again, I wanted to bring this. Pinecrest has supported this project, the bus rapid transit system, through the entire study process. I think we supported it in 15, 16, and 17 or 18 or whenever. So what I wanted to do was just reiterate our support for this system, and I wouldn't have brought it forward unless there was a reason to. And recently, as Commissioner Regalado, she had questioned some of the things, but her questions are not about the bus rapid transit project itself. Commissioner McGee, however, since our last meeting, was questioning the project itself, and I felt it important that we re-emphasize our commitment to this. And I think what Commissioner McGee is doing is his right, it's his duty, and we should respect it. And he's asked a number of questions, and I think that the county has answers, knowing his questions. I spoke with him, they have answers to all his questions. And, I understand where he's coming from. There has been a tremendous amount of social injustice, not only here, but across the country, in relation to transportation projects. He feels that we've been left behind over time and they haven't done anything. I don't think that's true. Look, the Metrorail was slated to come down here when it got built in the 80s, and it never came down. And people made promises that we would get the Metrorail. The Metrorail was infeasible then, and it's infeasible now. But they, instead of leaving us with nothing, they put together a bus rapid transit system. Other corridors, specifically the North Corridor, got nothing. They've been promised Metrorail and have waited for Metrorail, and may even attempt to do Metrorail again, and may not get it again. Highly likely that's the case. So I think what Commissioner McGee is doing is the correct thing. He's serving his constituents. He's asking, I think, very smart questions. But I believe that the fastest way to Metrorail is by implementing this project. And I think it's time that we as leaders in Miami-Dade County quit telling our constituents what they want to hear and tell them the truth. The Metrorail isn't a good project. It's infeasible. And there is no plan to get Metrorail if we were to scrap this project. So why is it infeasible? Ms. Bravo said several reasons. One, it's very expensive. It's $1.5 billion. It's 87% of the money slated for rapid transit on our 6 corridors. When we are 16%, we're one of 6 lines, so 16%. So it's very expensive, and it has no ridership, or has not enough ridership to rank in a significant way. So what do? I don't know anything about how to make heavy rail systems less expensive, but I do know how to get ridership. And what I would suggest is that ridership isn't ridership. I mean, it's not real numbers. It's not you need to have X amount of people showing up at the Metro Rail station or the bus rapid transit station and count those people, and then you can apply for Metro Rail. Ridership is a theoretic number, and it's derived from a couple of numbers, and it's legal ridership in the sense it's what your intensity in population and employment exists in your comprehensive plan in your station areas. And so let's just take Pinecrest, for example, and look at the 136th Street intersection and do an exercise relative to intensity and ridership. When you looked at what's allowed in the Pinecrest section of 136th Street, you have half-acre single-family residences and essentially not mixed use, but single-use commercial, and it's scheduled for big box B1 or B2 or something like that. And when you extract the number of people that could possibly live in there if it was built out, and the number of people that could possibly work in there if it was built out, you get hundreds, maybe a few thousand people, when you really need 20,000 people within the station area. So you go down the corridor and look at the station areas, and the only station area that may even warrant Metrorail is the Cutler Bay Station in the Southland Mall, because they went back 15 years ago and changed the land use to 250 units an acre, mixed use with not an unlimited height, but a 17-story height. So it parallels Dadeland. And when you extract the population that's allowed and the employment, you drop it into a model, that gives you the ridership number. So the pathway to Metrorail, if somebody were to want to get Metrorail, is go and change the land use densities and intensities in the station areas of all the local governments. So whatever stations are in Miami-Dade County, they would necessarily need to go change those. In whatever stations in each municipality, they wouldn't go and change those. I believe the county has already done analysis where they've shown what the ridership would be with the existing comprehensive plans, and showed if you wanted a higher level of rapid transit, what type of population densities and intensities you would need in those stations. So it's not about waiting till 35,000 people show up at the station. It's about step number one, figure out what Metrorail ridership would get you. Step number two, change the comp plans in the local governments to accomplish that. Step number three, start to go through an application. Now, it's an oversimplified process, but that's effectively how you get Metrorail. So instead of scrapping this project, I think it's important that we follow a process like that, and work proactively to get Metro. We just can't throw our hands up and say we were promised it, we deserve it, and do nothing except submit another bad application. And they don't fund these things very frequently. It's been 20 years. So with that, if there's any conversation to be had, that's my spiel about this. If we want to consider a motion for the resolution or have a conversation, does anybody have any questions?
Well, I'm certainly comfortable making a motion to approve the resolution in support of BRT. As long as I've been elected on council, we've been wrestling with BRT, and Councilmember McDonald, who served up until November, was a tremendous proponent of BRT through his leadership on the National League of Cities, and gave very, very persuasive presentations to Pinecrest Council, at least over the years, about why BRT was the right option for the South Corridor. And the argument was a good argument and a persuasive argument 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and 6 years ago when I voted yes in support of BRT. And the arguments still stand the test of time. I very much want to see some improvement on the mass transit corridors into South Dade. The communities need it. The communities deserve it. And I make the argument that if everybody wants to throw the baby out with the bathwater on the BRT project with all of its merits, then the county and every municipality in South Dade needs to be willing to mark pause on all development, all building, all permits, all life in South Dade until it manages to find some sort of viable alternative. That's not going to happen. And so we need to let good enough be good enough as we work towards the perfect. And if the perfect is a train, then God willing, all of the local municipalities and the county leadership will make the changes necessary to get us that train. But in the meantime, a lot of people are trying to get to work and they need BRT. So I would encourage my council members here in Pinecrest to vote in support of BRT, and I would encourage all the municipalities up and down the South Transit Way to do the same.
Guido, I wanted to do
Mr. Mayor.
a public hearing. Is anybody from the public here to speak on this?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Hokumer gives a perfect segue because our speaker is none other than former Vice Mayor James McDonald.
Jim McDonald. Don't tell me so. Mr. McDonald,
Hold on a minute.
welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Anna, for those kind words. And it's good here. I've been sitting here for an hour. It's been very
It
interesting.
wasn't even a setup, Jim. I had no idea you were going to present to us.
Well, I
Fantastic.
just wish I wish I could vote again. And it's good to see Doug. I haven't seen Doug since, when was it? Whenever we started doing Zoom. So Doug, hello. And Alice, good to see you too. Alice, I don't really have much to say. Alice made an excellent presentation. And I think it's important for our council to once again endorse the BRT. This has been a long struggle in the community to get this kind of transit. And as Anna mentioned, when I was chair of the National League's Transportation Committee, I had the opportunity to see and visit other cities and with their BRT systems, and they're all different. But what we're doing here, what is about to happen, hopefully in this town, we're going to set a standard nationally for, I mean, when we talk about gold standard BRT, we will be the platinum standard. Really, I don't think that any other community in the country will have a system like ours. But as Joe said, nothing is perfect, and the people that sold rail years ago didn't fully, they just made promises, and unfortunately, it won't happen with the ridership down here. But what Alice didn't mention was, not only is this BRT system going to be gold standard, platinum standard, whatever, bringing people out of South Dade north, but I know it's going to start helping develop, like Joe mentioned, Cutler Bay downtown. I would think it's going to help us reverse the flow of people traveling not only uptown, but downtown. So, and as Alice mentions, if we don't do this, if our community collectively doesn't move forward with this plan and have to give back the 100 million to the feds and 100 million to the state, nothing's ever going to happen down here. So this is a golden opportunity for gold standard BRT to move forward. And I know our council has always been a supporter of this since as long as I was on council. And I just implore you and urge you just to once again strongly endorse BRT. It's going to really benefit the entire community. That's all I got to say. Good to see everybody.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. And now I will adjourn myself.
Good to see you.
All right. Good to see everybody. Take care.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions on this? And if, Anna, you made a motion, correct?
Correct.
If anybody wants a second, that's fine. If not, we can take questions or have a conversation, whichever you like. If not, we can vote.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to assess. Any debate? Doug, anything?
Well, I've just always supported rail. I think once you build BRT, that's what you're going to get. It's all good, valid points, but I think once, like I said, once you get BRT, you'll never get rail. That's it. You're stuck. And I think we have been promised. I think the ridership numbers, all those numbers are just numbers. There's a new administration in the federal government. Those policies can change on ridership. I'm still in support of rail to this day.
Got it. Katie, anything?
No, I agree with everything that's said. I'm a little newer to all of this. I don't have quite the history that you all have, but Alice, the presentation was excellent. I had, a few questions as you went along and you answered them all. And it sounds good to me. I mean, I was around in the 80s when the Metrorail was built and I remember that process. And I can't imagine scrapping this and scrapping the money and starting from zero with rail at this point. So sounds good to me.
Shannon, anything? Any comments?
I think there's something to be said about a bird in hand.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Okay, with that, we have a motion and a second. Guido, do you just call the question?
Yes, sir. You can take a voice vote.
Okay, so all in favor of the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Opposed.
We have 1 opposed, so the motion passes. Alice, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Alice.
You've done great work. We love it. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Clark, that's good. Thank you, everybody. Good discussion. Let's go back. Okay. We have one more presentation, and the presentation we're going to hear from now is the underline.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great. So, hello, everybody. My name is Masif Faroki. I'm the manager of community outreach for the Underline, and I'm going to keep this pretty short and sweet. I'm out here to be able to introduce myself. I'm here with my colleague, Brianna Fay, who's the Chief Technology Officer for the Underline. And I wanted to thank Mayor Corradino, want to thank Council Member Katie Abbott. Had a brief conversation with them about us, the Underline. So we are a 10-mile linear park, urban trail, public art destination, and a mobility hub that sits directly underneath the Metrorail. We go from roughly Brickell all the way down to Dadeland South. We're starting right now, we're broken into 3 phases. So our first phase is the Brickell Backyard, which goes from the Miami River to 13th Street. We are looking to have that phase open soon. And so why I'm here is we're going to be going all the way down to Dadeland South. And as such, it's my role to be able to have community conversations that talk about this wonderful park. We heard about how important transportation is, and we are, as such, we are a multimodal corridor where we are going to be factoring in biking, walking, jogging, etc. And so with that, again, this is just a really brief intro. I'm just introducing myself and just moving around, making a conversation, just familiarizing folks as a point of contact. And then also in terms of activation or action pieces, we're really looking to be able to get the community's input on a couple of different things. We are heading right now into our phase 2, which goes from 13th Street to 19th Avenue. It's about 2 miles, and we are in the design phase. So we're factoring in public input in that aspect. And so I've got a link that I'll go ahead and share. I can send it to be able to open up for community participation. And my colleague, Brianna Fay, who's with me, I'm going to toss it to her to be able to talk briefly about some wonderful things she's doing in regards to technology in this public park.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. Really excited to be a part of these community conversations. And as Masi mentioned, and what he's bringing up now, so we are working on several different technology initiatives for the Underline through a grant that was funded by the Knight Foundation. And one of those initiatives is about gathering community feedback and input about what kind of technology initiatives, specifically in projects that we will realize on the Underline. So there's sort of an infinite array of possibilities. We won't dive into them tonight because I want to be respectful of everyone's time. But we did launch a survey in order to collect some of that initial feedback, and we're also doing more in-depth focus groups and collecting community feedback in an array of different ways. So if anyone is also specifically interested in weighing in a more in-depth manner, please reach out to Masi or myself. And I'm sure you'll be able to get our contact info through the organization. When we also have this survey that is a more succinct version of polling kind of just the general community and public about ideas that we might be able to realize on the Underline in relation to technology. So some of these things could be our initiative to provide free Wi-Fi for the community. We're looking at having augmented reality experiences that are fully produced by some local universities and local talent universities in Miami-Dade County. We're also working on basically just an array of technology projects, sometimes technology empowered art. So there's a lot of different opportunities here, and all of these are kind of bundled into this survey so that we can understand what the community finds most impactful, interesting, exciting, inspiring, as well as if there are existing projects, whether they're technology related or not, that people would like us to be aware of in order to gain inspiration from or reference.
And just a quick contextual piece I wanted to put in is the completion of our park, which again goes from the Miami River, Brickell Station, all the way down to Dadeland South. 2025 is when that project is set to complete. But again, our communication out with the community all the way down through, we want to start that early to be able to foster that relationship. So really happy and thankful to be a part of this conversation, and then continuing on as we move to be able to head south down to Dadeland South with this wonderful transformational park.
Great. Thank you all very much. Time.
She's gone.
All right. Are there any questions on this project?
Oh, there's.
The only question I have, the last time I had an in-depth conversation about the underline was fantastic. There were still, and I want to say it was 2 years ago, there were still 2 tiny pieces of the proposed underline, I believe in Coral Gables, that still had some ownership, land use, zoning. There was some issue with those 2 sections. Have you guys been able to resolve that yet, or is that still in process?
So that would be phase 3, which we haven't quite started. We're completing phase 2, and phase 2 about 2023 is when we're set to complete that. So I believe those are things that are still ongoing, and I can follow up with you with a little bit more depth in regards to that. But I believe those are still some pieces that are ongoing.
They're ongoing, but my understanding is not only on the state level. I know. The underline has gotten state funding, and there's an incredible amount of support in Coral Gables for the project. So there's a lot of political momentum in really making the underline actually complete the full 10 miles and not die halfway done. That's really my concern, and because the underline doesn't, of course, come to Pinecrest, it goes to Dadeland South, which is less than a mile away from Pinecrest on the other side of US 1, but when we think about our interconnectivity throughout Miami-Dade County and the bike path interconnectivity and the walking path interconnectivity and the quality of life interconnectivity, getting that last chunk of the underline down to Dadeland South so that it becomes accessible to South Dade is really key. If we don't have that missing link, then South Dade becomes completely isolated from all of the amazing innovative work that's happening in the rest of Miami-Dade County. And so if there are issues that Pinecrest or that anybody down here can help resolve, please count on us, because all of South Dade is depending on figuring out how to fix that half mile or those 2 chunks of a quarter mile in Coral Gables that aren't quite in the bag yet.
Yeah, that set, it's a pretty long stretch. It's going to be about 7 miles. It's going to go from 19th Avenue all the way down to Dadeland South. What's good is, what helps us stay on a track is, and Ms. Bravo actually spoke to this, which is we've been able to patch into some federal funding that really has us making sure that we have this project completed by 2025. But then we still have to focus in on the funds to be able to raise for that 3rd stretch. And so absolutely, that helps, but 100% we do need to really push for that, because as this, the premise of the discussion was how key transportation is to really connecting everybody and really pushing as a united front on that end. And so that's why I'm here. And this is not the first time. I'll continue to keep on coming back to be able to update in that win that we absolutely need to log in. So really appreciate the help and support, and absolutely will take everyone up on that.
Thank you. Any other questions from the council on this topic? Katie, anything?
No, I just want to thank you for coming and presenting, and I enjoyed speaking with you, and I would love to be, help you out any way that I can. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, council member, we had talks behind the scenes, just really talking about how, with some specialized groups that we can gather together to be able to get some more key insight, that we can work on that to be able to really develop these pieces. So looking forward to that as well too. So, yep. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Anybody else? All right, Sina, thank you very much. We appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, you're ready to go back to your regular order?
Let's do it. We're on second reading of the ordinances, correct?
Yes, sir. You have on second reading an ordinance of the Village of Pinecrest, Florida, amending the 2019-2020 operating and capital outlay budget for the fourth quarter, providing for an effective date.
All right, let her rip.
If you'll recall, this would be on second reading. This is the final amendment to the last fiscal year's budget. There's a cover memo if there's any questions that you'd like me to go over in more detail.
Any questions for staff?
Guido, I noticed that there's still somebody on the call. Brianna is still on the call.
Ask her if she has a question.
No, I'm okay. I just was hanging with you guys.
All right.
Guido, is there anybody here to speak on this item? So we will open and close the public hearing. So with no questions, we have a motion.
I'll move.
Oh, we got a motion. Second. Going once. Looks like it's going to fail, Yossi, for lack of a second.
I'll move. I'll second.
All right, we have a second. Motion is second. Guido? You call it?
Councilmember Abbott,
Yes.
Councilmember Del Prado,
Yes.
Councilmember Hokumer,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kraft,
Yes.
Mayor Corradino.
Yes.
Motion carries. The ordinance is adopted.
All right. Reports and recommendation. Is that the next thing? Yes, reports and recommendations. I have mine up. Coronavirus pandemic. It's still going on. So that's the update for the week. We still have coronavirus. It's still happening. I guess what they're telling us is there's more infection per day on average right now than there was in July. I guess the hospitalizations haven't necessarily gone up because it's just a matter of a number of people just getting tested. The emphasis, it should peak soon. I don't think the folks think we're in danger of losing hospital capacity. So hopefully sometime in February, we can start that long decline down to where we were in October. And we need to start focusing on vaccines. The county put together a vaccine plan, which through the hospital systems, we have the potential to give the actual shots of 75,000 vaccines a week, which theoretically gets our over 65 population taken care of by March, and 40% of the rest of us taken care of by May. And that leaves us another, 30 or 40% to get. So theoretically by June, we could have a significant impact. But the fact is now there's a lack of vaccines. So nothing's gone as planned. So we'll probably all need to have patience through this. And that's that, if anybody has any questions. Not, we'll move to the next item, the legislative agenda for the school board. Katie?
Yeah, so that's me. And I just want to piggyback on what you said. If anyone's listening who falls in the category of ages 65 and above, all I can say from personal experience of helping my parents is just to keep trying. It took us a few hours just refreshing the pages and trying again on several websites. So don't give up. I know it's frustrating, and just keep trying. So, so legislative priorities for the Miami-Dade County Public Schools. As you all know, every year they have priorities that they take up to Tallahassee, and they like to share it with the municipalities just to get our support and our input. So the superintendent wrote the letter to the mayor that was in your packet, and he outlined the 5 points that he asked us to support him in. And as you know, along with everybody else this year, they've had a tough time with it with COVID. They've had a lot of unexpected expenses paid, trying to get the schools up to par when they were forced to open. As we're all going to be faced with next year, there's going to be a budget shortage. So I just wanted to present those to you and get your thoughts on them, and whether you're interested in just voicing our support for them.
Any questions?
Anyone?
I happen to like it. I'll be supportive of it. I think good work.
Okay, and if you guys don't mind, I have another school issue if you want me to jump that up.
We need to vote on that, Guido, right? Or is that consensus?
Mr. Mayor, if there's consensus from the council, I'll note it as such.
Does anybody hate this?
No,
Seeing
I
none.
don't hate it at all, but I think what Councilmember Abbott is saying is that she has a resolution supporting the designation of teachers as essential workers in the
Yeah, that's the second issue.
of the COVID-19 vaccination. So I think she's suggesting we move that up in the agenda and address it now.
Or we can wait. I just thought put the school
No,
stuff
no.
together, but
That's
I don't
fine.
care. It's whenever.
Tab
you want.
17, right?
The what? Sorry.
Tab 17?
Let's see.
I can read it into the record, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, please.
It's a resolution of the Village of Pinecrest, Florida, expressing support for Miami-Dade County Public Schools proposal urging the governor to prioritize COVID-19 vaccines for teachers, providing for an effective date.
So this is actually, a separate issue. As you guys know, the vaccination control falls under the state, and it hasn't, as we just talked about, been totally clear. The process hasn't been transparent. We know who has gotten it, and that's been great. But the question is, who is the next batch of people to get it? And what Miami-Dade County Public Schools is talking about tomorrow at their board meeting, which what other boards are doing across the state, is asking our governor to prioritize teachers as essential workers that he has voiced he might not be interested in doing. And it's a question of, who should be next? It's a big question. In my opinion, I think that teachers should get it. I don't necessarily think that coronavirus is being spread at school, but I do think that our teachers need to be protected. Right now we have, to give you an idea, at the high school, we have 36 teachers out right now, quarantined. So, the kids on a day-to-day basis, they're going back and forth from virtual to being in school to virtual. At the middle school, when the teachers are out, they don't have subs, they throw them all in the auditorium. So it's really inconsistent. We all know that in-person learning is the best. And without these teachers being vaccinated and protected and being able to stay in school when the kid have exposure, it's just going to continue to disrupt the learning. So I ask that council consider supporting that for our schools and teachers. It's not just teachers, it's all school personnel.
Absolutely. I think our teachers have been heroic under the circumstances, and they deserve our support.
And I think, frankly, we all have to recognize that one of the truths which has been underscored several times during the pandemic is that our economy cannot and will never return to any sort of semblance of full functionality or productivity if we don't have functioning public schools, that they are essential for every single element of our national economy to come back to life as we get coronavirus under control. And so from a practical standpoint, I think it just makes good sense policy-wise to prioritize teachers and declare them essential and get them moved as high up in the priority lists as possible.
Doug, anything on this one?
Well, I would just say, I don't want to give my opinion on who's more essential than one worker or another. I mean, to me, somebody who was there to stock the store shelves for food and check me out at the grocery store in March and April, and even during the high times when the pandemic was at its worst. Like now, Joe, you just said we're at our worst. We've been since July. That person isn't essential, and I don't want to send the governor something saying, well, I think they're essential and they're not. I don't want to have my opinion put in record that somebody is more essential than somebody else. That person that the grocery store could be 64 with pre-existing conditions that exposes them, according to the CDC, 65 and older, that person doesn't even qualify.
I can't hear Councilmember Kraft. He's muted himself.
Go again.
Well, somebody else will get mine, my computer's on. But anyway, so I mean, for instance, my wife is a frontline worker. She's a physician, and she's refused to take it because she still has patients who are in need and can't get it. And she just feels it's ethical. Joe.
I'm sorry, I messed up. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Can you hear?
You're still,
No,
no,
I'm on.
it looks like you are. Never mind. I think.
So I mean, it's not that I wouldn't be in sports, but I'm not gonna, like I said, give my opinion on, well, that 24-year-old teacher is more important than the 64-year-old that's providing food at my table for my kids and I, or the person that's, you know, could be probably 500 different other, you know. Can you hear?
Yes.
There's a terrible echo happening. Am I the only one who's
Yeah, I don't know why.
I was gonna suggest that when like Councilmember Kraft is talking, that maybe the mayor put his on mute and then let just Councilmember Kraft unmute his, and maybe there won't be that background noise. I
Yeah,
don't know.
when I did, it muted him,
Right.
which is a unique
But
skill
that's
to
it.
have.
That's it, Mayor. And like I said, I see if you guys feel that they're more essential, then that's fine. But I'm not going to chime in and say that they're more essential than somebody else. I think it's wrong.
Yeah, I like you, Katie. I think it's a great thing. Good work. What I think you're saying here is that they are, I don't think you're saying that they're more essential than anybody else. It's just when they move to the next category and say whoever the lot is of essential people, teachers are part of that group, and so include them in there. So I don't think it says you're more essential than a fireman or whoever. Just ask the governor to consider that when he puts it together. I think it's a good resolution.
Yeah,
all right.
absolutely not. I don't mean to imply that at all. It's just, you know, our goal this year is to get back to some sense of normality. And, you know, we have so many of our kids in public schools and so many of our teachers that it's just it is so disruptive right now that if we can really get that under control, it's going to make a huge difference in so many lives.
I agree. I don't think that we're saying that one group is more essential than another. We're just saying that this particular group deserves a priority. And there may be others that deserve a priority as well.
Well, I just
Hold on. We have a lag and we're talking over it. Shannon's.
That's it. No, that's all I had to say.
Okay, go, Doug. Is yours delayed, Shannon? Okay, but I'm delayed over here by about 10 seconds.
All right, that's it.
All right, we have a motion. We have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, Guido. Oh, are all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, hearing none, the motion passes. Okay, next on the list, Florida Legislature Appropriations Request.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Did Vice Mayor Kraft vote yes or no on that?
Yes.
He voted yes.
Okay.
I just wanted my objection on that. How I'm not comfortable with prioritizing one essential worker over another. Who am I to say?
Tab 7.
Tab 7 is a Florida Legislature Appropriations request. So we're coming into legislative session and they've sent out the forms for us to fill out. So I just wanted to give a report to council on what we would be applying for. As you know, most of these appropriations, they require that we commit to a match. Last year, if you recall, we had applied for a $500,000 grant for redoing, you know, the ADA compliance issues up on the Lakeview Terrace and Pinecrest Gardens. And we actually scored really well with that grant, which required a 50% match. So we would have matched that with another $500,000. And then it was vetoed out of the budget, unfortunately. So because of the timing of that veto and the next cycle of that particular grant, we were waiting on the governor's decision, and so we missed the deadline to apply for that grant. So staff had approached Representative Lupus to see if he would be helpful in perhaps trying to lobby on our behalf to just have the $500,000 built into the budget. And he said he would be happy to help us with that. So that's, I'm recommending that be one of our legislative appropriation requests. And again, that council would understand that when we make that request, that we would be committing to the match in order to do that for another $500,000. The other thing that is basically on our list of big project, construction-wise projects to do are all the stormwater drainage projects that are identified in our stormwater master plan. We have, in the course of that large master plan, they've identified over $40 million worth of drainage programs. So wherever we can try to get funding to move those projects along, that would be my recommendation that we go forward with that. So those were the two priorities I was suggesting. I don't know if there's any other issues that you all wanted us to try to go after. I know there's been discussions when we talk about legislative agenda of focusing more on the county, on all these efforts with the county commissioner's help. So just wanted to put that out there and get your approval and consensus on those issues, and then we'll go ahead and start filling out those applications and getting them into the legislature.
Have they predicted what the shortage is going to be this year at all? Do they have any of those ideas yet for the budget?
There's been things that have been reported, but based on what the latest things I've heard, their revenues are not as bad as what they thought they were going to be. So I think they had a worse outlook than what the reality is actually playing itself out. But I haven't gotten any real detail. We'll know more obviously as they go through their legislative session, what they're going to do with appropriations.
Mm-hmm.
I also think it's all guesstimating, but there's a lot of talk now, as there was with the outgoing presidential administration, that there was going to be a lot of infrastructure projects that never actually happened or were never actually funded. But there's always that opportunity that we might get more money from the feds also for these types of projects. So we'll be working on both those angles.
Having just walked the village of Pinecrest, which I know everybody on this dais has done as well, I think the water issue remains an issue. I know that there's obviously been a referendum. I don't think we're going to resolve that issue tonight in 20 minutes, and we haven't resolved it in 20 years. But I do think that this is perhaps something we should consider seeking state appropriate or submitting an application for state appropriation as well. I understand this isn't due, or the application is not due until February 8th. And so maybe it would be more appropriate to discuss this at the strategic planning session, since it's probably going to be a more protracted discussion.
Yeah, I would echo Shannon's comment. I think that at this point, we can give consensus to go ahead on anything that's in our current strategic plan. And it wouldn't be appropriate to give a go ahead for an appropriation that isn't included in our strategic plan. And since we're coming right up on strategic planning workshops, if we decide to put it in, then we can discuss it then.
Yeah, I think the water issue is I thought the water issue was resolved. What we did was, just to go over the history, the council in the summer of 18 decided water was more of a county thing than a state thing. And so we're focused on getting the county to do it. We gave it one more shot that fall, and then we held a referendum to see if the people of Pinecrest would want to pay for it. And it was a resounding landslide defeat. It was 62% against the rest. And so the people of Pinecrest essentially said, we can't put significant public money up towards the county's water system. And so in leading up to the referendum, we needed to ask the referendum question because if the entirety of the village of Pinecrest was going to pay for it, we needed to get that resolved first. The next step in the process is, and this was agreed to by the folks that were advocating for the water referendum, was the special taxing district. And this is where those people without water right now would determine if they were going to fund it on their own. And so we had finished our obligations, which we said as a contribution to that, we would finish the design of the project. We would help bid it, and I'll let the manager discuss what we did to get through that part of the project. And even had conversations. We had a water fund that had, I forget how much money in it, but in working with the neighbors, I suggested I would be supportive of the village, even contributing an amount that to a certain extent that was in the water fund at the time. I think it was $100,000 a year, $150,000 a year, or something like that. We said we would go. So I think the process of water is they need to follow through and come to a conclusion on the special taxing district. Now, our lobbying efforts, since we've been lobbying as far as Pinecrest has been alive to the state of Florida about water, is dead. We haven't received anything since Gary was the mayor. And I don't anticipate we're going to receive anything from the state government anytime soon, particularly with the budget in the shape that it's in. So our efforts, and we told everybody this as we went into the referendum, now we shift gears. Now let's go work with the county to figure out how they can build their water system, since it's clearly not a Pinecrest problem and people in Pinecrest won't do it. Now I'm assuming that the people that don't have the water don't want to pay for it at all because they haven't moved forward on the special assessment district and it's just been sitting there. So but we need now to compel the county to build their water system. And that's where now we're coupling it up with the sewer system and the septics. And that's what Commissioner Regalado was speaking about. So I have no intent. I don't think we should ask the state government. If we want to fill out the paperwork, I guess that's fine. But it's, if there's a local match to it and it's significant in the terms of millions and millions of dollars, I won't be supportive of that. And I don't think the people of Pinecrest are going to be supportive of it either. But it's exactly how we refine our approach is worthy of the strategic plan. But in a nutshell, I think that's where we're going. And we can always change it. I mean, because it's a new council, and I'm not saying don't change it, but that's where we are as of today. It's not even in our strategic plan anymore, best of my knowledge. Josie, where are we? What did we do for them to get the plans of designed and bid? We worked on that with the water people, right?
So the council approved, my recollection is $150,000 to finish the plans and bring them up to date because they were dated. So we finished that. We actually put the project out to bid and got solid bids, so we would know the actual true project costs to build. And we've also applied subsequent to that to I want to say 3 different federal grants that are still up there, and in play. We're supposed to get an answer on those grants. They've said it this month, so we'll know more there. I don't know. My feeling is that the folks that were kind of leading this on the citizen side, on the resident side, are kind of waiting to see what happens with that grant, with those grants, because obviously if the feds can pay for it, then they don't have to worry about doing anything with the special taxing district. So that's where we stand right now.
Wasn't the special taxing district supposed to move forward earlier than now? And I assume COVID got in the way of it, but this was a year ago.
At some point, I think that they wanted to see what happened with the grant. And because even we may not get the entire grant, but we might get lucky and get part of it. And then they wouldn't have to come out of their pocket as much as if they had to build it, as a special taxing district. Meanwhile, the county commission did confirm over the fall, and they reconfirmed taking unused GOB funds from the 2008 GOB fund, and they appropriated 500,000 towards the neighborhood improvement category, which from, with discussions with Commissioner Suarez's office, and then Commissioner Regalado agreed, and all that went to county commission. So there's a little bit of seed money there from the GOB bond, the county GOB bond from the county towards potentially water projects. If that doesn't go forward, we would have to use that funding for something else, neighborhood category improvement projects that are eligible, so that they don't take it away from the village. So there is a finite time frame for accessing that 500,000 if that group is going to avail themselves of that. So it's not, they can't sit on it forever and think that they would still have that, at least that 500,000 that the county's committed.
Shannon, did you have more comments?
No, I guess my point is, listen, the conversation may be premature. Ideally, we receive federal money for it. But if we don't, I just don't see the downside to submitting an appropriations request to the state. But we can certainly talk about it at the strategic planning session, when hopefully by then we'll have a response to our request for a federal grant.
Yeah, I think, you know what
And I'm very clear, forgive me, I just want to be very clear on the record that I understand that there was a referendum and that the people of Pinecrest have spoken, and that we need to respect that. And I do respect that. But
Yeah.
I think we can't just consider that we check the box and, oh, well, 12% of our population should remain without water or county water. I think it's our duty as council to look for a solution.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Just described a huge amount of effort that staff and council has been pursuing post-referendum to get water. I will say that the particular impediment to writing off an appropriation request is a policy problem. And the policy problem is that most infrastructure appropriation requests require a match. Mm-hmm. And given the fact that our strategic plan no longer includes water in it, and that the referendum on self-funding the county's water deficiencies tanked, we have a significant policy question. Should we be matching any possible appropriation on the state level? And if we continue to pursue this, are we in fact doing what the county has been doing to South Dade with their train to nowhere for the past decade? The fact of the matter is, I had very direct conversations with the Miami-Dade delegation. There is no interest by the state of Florida in funding water infrastructure projects. None. We have gotten no water from them for the past 10 years. There is no interest on the budget side from the state in funding them in the future. And the only place where we have real avenues for possible solutions are either federal grants, which may or may not come, special taxing district, which, as we just demonstrated, the beneficiaries of those special taxing districts don't appear to have any particular urgency in actually solving the problem on their own, or urging and lobbying the county to finish its own water system. The state's role in this through appropriation, to be quite frank, is a red herring. It is a boondoggle. And to continue to dangle state appropriations in front of our constituents who don't have access to potable water is, from my point of view, misleading. I think we have to be direct, truthful, clear, and realistic with people. The state of Florida is not going to fund this anytime soon. And we should be honest with our constituents about that reality. And we should be honest with ourselves about what our policy is when it comes to matching state grants and state appropriations.
I agree. Unfortunately, I think we learned that the hard way after close to 25 years of seeking things that at the state level that they just don't fund, and they're not going to fund. And I think the issue is that one of the issues is Miami-Dade County has performed so poorly in terms of how they manage their water system that the state wouldn't fund them. And Raquel Regalado actually says this best. You know, they don't even perform well in the first place. Why would the state give them money when they can't even meet their own objectives, minimum standards? So I think this is a great topic for strategic planning, because I think we got to really work this angle with getting Miami-Dade County to help us all get water. And it's not just Pinecrest. There's plenty of other places in the county that don't have potable water. And by the way, they've got a multi-billion-dollar septic problem as well that has to be cleared up. So, Katie, you got anything?
Yeah, I have a lot to say, but I understand we're going to wait until strategic planning, which is fine. I have a quick question. Does the county ever ask the state for the monies?
Excellent.
Or not? Do we know if there's anything? I'm just curious.
I don't know.
The question is, that's a good question. And I don't know if they haven't been asking the state for money. I mean, you think about the silliness of us asking the state for money to build the county water system when the county's not asking the state to build the water system. But again, the attorney and the manager are working on a white paper for how we actually go and approach the county for the water. And that's the important part about strategic planning. And I would suggest if the county was going to ask the state for money, that we would help them ask the state for money. But
Right.
Again, it's not our project. And we can't build the county's project and then give it to the county so that they can put water in the pipes and charge us for the water, right? I mean, that's
Okay, well, I understand we're gonna not talk about it now. We're gonna table it, but I do have, I just want to say, I don't know, I just have faith in this council that we're gonna figure it out. This has been 25 years going, and I think everybody recognizes this an issue. No one recognizes that it's not a problem, and I just have faith. I think we can do it, and I'm looking forward to working with you to figure it out.
I agree. We can figure this out. And the good part about this is that this group has had, look, we took on the tough question of the referendum, right? We called it what it is. It's not our problem, but we'll ask the question that nobody wanted to ask forever. And we did it. And that was the referendum. And we answered the question. And now we're chasing down that decision tree, each part. And this is the first year we've been focused on Miami-Dade County. And so, again, 20 years with the state, it's not been productive. Let's work this angle down with the county. And, we've been successful at just about everything we've done in this group. And I have no question, you're right, Katie, we're going to figure this out. And that's why I think when we get into strategic planning and start to go, dedicate a couple of hours to this conversation, and we'll be able to come up with an approach to get this done. I mean, I don't think anybody's goal is to leave it alone and not do anything. I just think if we tell people, hey, let's go to the state and rest all their hopes on that, like Anna said, nothing's happened with the state. We'd be crazy to give $30,000 for somebody to go up there and do nothing for us because we're not getting it. Let's focus those energies on Miami-Dade County because it's their project. Doug, you want to say anything on this stuff?
I agree with what Anna was saying and Joe, that we have been running after the state. I think we need to fix it here locally with ourselves in the county. I mean, why would the state give us $2 million for, drinking water if the wells are still good and there's no contamination? But then we have the Everglades to fix, and the state has the beaches to fix, other water problems throughout the state. I think we can fix it locally. The big problem at the county, and I said this when our past mayor of the county came before this council, that the ordinance says that the developers, that's the word, the developers will put in the infrastructure, the water lines, and the fire hydrant. People got to ask themselves, and I've asked it to the mayor then, why is it that I don't think the true meaning, the intent back then of putting in the word developer meant that it was a homeowner for 50 years that has lived in her home. Now they decide that they want to put in a new kitchen, a bathroom, and upgrade. That triggers the 50% rule. Now they have to run a hydrant and a water line and spend $150,000 because I don't think that person or that family, that resident is considered a developer. There's a big, in my opinion, meeting between a developer, like somebody like a Bergeron who's developing 1,000 acres. So that's what needs to change at the county level is look at that, their ordinance that says it should be that a developer is defined more as a developer, not a single family homeowner who lived on that property for 55 years, now has to put in the county's infrastructure because they decide they want to remodel. It's not fair. It hasn't been fair. But they've even been interpreting that as that's how they've been interpreting it. I think it's wrong. I think it's been wrong for years and years. They've been getting by with it. There's a new commission. You need to ask them that question. What is your meaning of a developer? You really want to tell, like I said, those people that have waiting their lifelong dream, now they've retired and want to remodel their home. Oh, but by the way, just because we think you're a developer, you're going to have to run 1,000 feet of water main. And oh, by the way, put in the fire department's fire hydrant for everybody too. Ridiculous.
And I think you're exactly correct. And the approach with the county is that we're going to a new set. Look, Mitch and I went up there, and Yossi's had conversations with them about changing the rules, and they looked us straight in the eye and said no. And right, the old and as long as we've been going up there for, I've been around since '96 in sitting up here. And as long as we've been dealing with that, they've looked us in the eye and they've said no. And it's been the same set of county commissioners until right now. And now look at South Bend. We have 3 brand new county commissioners. We have a brand new mayor, and perhaps there's a different perspective on all this stuff. And they're the ones that can change the rule. The state's not going to change the county law. It's the county that's got to change the law. And I think we get them. I think that now's the time to ask. And that's what we're doing this year. That's what the manager and the attorney are working on the process. That's when we talked about legislative agenda, the process is county focused on how to get water. What other communities don't have it? What other communities need it? How do you change the rule? What exactly do you need to change? Which county commissioners are sympathetic? Which aren't? Who do we have to lobby? And that's the approach. That's how we get the law changed. And then we get the water.
You're right. And I think every one of those new commissioners need to ask themselves what they think as what a developer is. Do they think, like I said, that family that's living on that property for 60, 70, 50, 40 years, that they're a developer, and really you're expecting them after they want to remodel their home, after they finally have a nest egg to do it, and you think that the intent of that ordinance was to say they have to put in a water main? I would say to Mitch that I think that that's even a legal challenge, but I think we have a commission that has sense and will look at that ordinance and say, you know what, this is the definition of developer, and this is the definition of a single family homeowner that's lived there, and what's right is right.
And that's where our efforts are going this year. Okay.
Okay, Joe, may I?
Yes, ma'am.
Real quick. Listen, we incorporated, right? Because there were some issues that the county wasn't resolving for us. We've navigated many of those. We've overcome many of those issues. And I'm not suggesting that we be dishonest to our voters, to our residents, and dangle something in front of them that is not a viable solution. But it is dishonest for us to talk about it every year around election time and then put it on the back burner. And I'm not suggesting that this council has done that, but I think that it has to be an issue that we continue to address. I know you all agree with that. But if we don't request the appropriation from the state, we're most certain not to get. You know, we listened to the Alice lady earlier tell us that after 20 years of requesting money, they got money for the BRT. And if our county should be handling this issue, then maybe we should be talking to the county about submitting an appropriation request on our behalf. Again, I kicked this off by saying we should discuss it as strategic planning, and I think that's a good idea, but I just don't feel that the box is checked, and I hope that everybody here agrees.
I agree. I think you're exactly right. We first off, we've never abandoned this project. It's always been our number one project. This year, we are going to coming out of strategic planning last year, and in our legislative sessions in the fall, we were taking a different approach. We were going to focus not on the state, because the state hasn't produced in 25 years. We were going to focus on the county. So the same level of effort that was going towards the fruitless state lobbying is going to go towards county lobbying for the first time. And I think we can be more successful there. And if we try this, man, I think within 2 years, we should have this accomplished. And that's the goal. We're going to go through this cycle and maybe the next one, and we should be ready to go, right? So it's never been off. It's always been a top priority, no matter what. And again, people always say, they talk about Pinecrest Gardens. You never do anything in Pinecrest Gardens. I get calls on Pinecrest Gardens every day. Every day we focus on it. Every day we focus on water. I mean, it's at the forefront of our to-do list. And I think we push their efforts to the county level, and we'll be successful. So you're right. I think that we can feather those out during strategic planning. And once Mitch and Yossi report back to us, we'll have a lot more to talk. But it's a great topic, and I think I think this year we're going in the right direction.
Please don't interpret my comments to disrespect any members of this council. I understand that it's important. I just want to underscore that I think it's an ongoing conversation.
No, I completely agree, and I think you're exactly right, and I think your comments are totally appropriate. All right, that horse is dead.
I actually
You
don't
wanna move
think
to
the
the
comment that this is something that this council has only talked about around election time and then hasn't worked on is appropriate. I think it's, in fact, entirely a misrepresentation of what this council has done. In fact, I would say this council has probably moved the ball farther down the field on the issue of water than any council since back in the day of Gary Matzner. So
again, I'm not saying that the council hasn't had a priority. I'm just saying that if we're talking about state appropriation, that we need to continue talking about.
Excuse me, I didn't finish my comment. The idea that this council has not been working actively and in an ongoing fashion year after year after year to move the potable water issue towards completion is a total misrepresentation of what this council has done over the past 5.5 years. In fact, we're so far down the decision tree that we've actually been able to have credible and productive conversations with our incoming county commissioner about specific policy changes that the county can make that can trigger a very quick resolution of the problem. In fact, County Commissioner Regalado alluded to one of them at the beginning of her comments when we opened up with her presentation to us. So yes, I think this is certainly something that we have to talk about in terms of strategic planning. What I do not understand, and I continue not to understand, is how a presentation about state appropriations, okay, has gotten devolved into a conversation about policy having to do with completing the county's potable water system when we do not have potable water in our strategic plan. This is a classic example of this council putting the cart before the horse. And so this conversation should have happened at our strategic planning workshop, which is scheduled for the end of January, not been folded into like some sort of weird Trojan horse, an appropriations discussion about two types of appropriations which are in our strategic plan. It simply doesn't make any sense to conflate these two discussions.
Are you done? I don't want to interrupt.
Go ahead, Shannon.
Again, do not misinterpret what I said. I did not say, and that's why, forgive me if I interrupted you. What I was saying is that I don't mean to disrespect this council, and I'm not saying that this council has not made water a priority. What I'm saying is that we need to continue to make it a priority, and that we should discuss it at strategic planning.
Yes, I think we're saying the same things, and I think I think you're both right. I think we're on the right track here. Let's break this down into strategic planning, and we'll be in good shape. All right. Anything else, Anna?
No, I don't have anything else.
Mr. Mayor, so we had consensus on the two things that I mentioned before, which were the ADA terrace for the historic part of Pinecrest Gardens up in the Lakeview Terrace, and the stormwater drainage.
Grant and something else.
Yeah? Okay. That's a yes, I guess. Okay.
I didn't hear a word you said.
I just want to double back that everybody understand that we're committing to the matching funds for the things that we are going to apply for, which I'm recommending be the project at, for the terrace at the Upper Garden, which will be a $500,000 appropriation request that we would match. It's the same thing we had committed with the grant that we lost. So I was hoping that council would still be okay with that. And then I'm just going to go after miscellaneous stormwater drainage programs, just to complete whatever is down our projects already identified in our stormwater master plan.
Anybody got a?
Is there a price tag on that we have?
We're $40 million worth of projects identified. So the first 10 years was going to be $10 million worth, and or $12 million worth, and we're just going down the line to complete those as we can get funds. Every once in a while, we'll apply for a grant and get funds from different sources. So I'm just going to ask for more money and see if we can land it for that.
Got it.
From a budget perspective, those sorts of grants don't make any difference. We spend the money anyway. We have a line item for stormwater. Whatever you were going to spend anyway, it'll simply expand our reach. So there's no budget impact to applying for that sort of grant. And it's perfectly in alignment with our budget and our strategic plan.
Right. On the Pinecrest Gardens one, even though like we typically would just tap into like our sidewalk fund for any type of ADA path projects, and we'll talk about the funds and the monies that are available in that fund right now that we would need to use for the lower garden path, but that fund is always being replenished over time. So I would suspect that we'll have $500,000 back into that fund shortly. So, okay. That's it, Mr. Mayor, for me.
Okay. Next on this resolutions, we already did A, B,
No.
tab 11.
Village manager report, communicate account.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed the clerk's report and the attorney's report.
The manager's
No,
report.
I missed the manager. I missed everything. I guess I'm hurrying along. Village manager, what do you got?
Are there any questions on communique? And I've also just submitted at the last meeting, I was asked to provide copies of both the septic system vulnerable to sea level rise report and the Biscayne Bay report card report, which are both very important to some of the things. Even the commissioner spoke about the fact that she's hyper focusing on these issues. So they're provided for you so that you can familiarize yourself with what the proposed recommendations are, and that were made from within the county, different departments, and ironically could serve to help us move some of our projects along.
Can you summarize the septic issue for us in a couple of paragraphs?
Sure. So what's happening, this is a countywide problem. There's a lot of areas in the county that are still reliant on septic systems as opposed to the traditional sanitary sewer system. The issue with septic systems is that the way that they're built relies on basically like a system that allows for the sewage water to come and then go through a series of layers of rock in order to eventually clean out the sewage and move the water into the aquifer. When there's a high level of groundwater, these septic systems begin to fail. And so because of sea level rise, the groundwater levels are also going up, which then present issues of intermittent malfunctioning of these systems countywide. That in turn, especially in areas that are very low lying. So we have some of those areas where when there's been a lot of heavy rain events and the ground is particularly saturated, compounded by a higher groundwater level together will cause more incidents of failing septic systems across the county. That then can impact the water quality levels even in Biscayne Bay, because all that becomes stormwater runoff that eventually makes its way into Biscayne Bay. So all these things are tied together. That's why there's a real big push right now on trying to fix the sanitary sewer system issue, because it does have an impact potentially on the environment and our natural resources.
Are our septic tanks vulnerable in the near term, or?
They have already identified, if you look at this report specifically that I provided, they've already identified a number of septic systems that already have intermittent failures in the village. And the report also indicates, obviously, you know, if you look 10 years out, 15 years out, it just keeps getting worse because groundwater levels are anticipated to go further up with sea level rise. And so in our case, there are areas of malfunctioning septic systems. There are areas of the county that are even in worse shape than we are because they're at lower elevations. And we're lucky, a lot of our areas are higher elevation. So even though we do have intermittent, it's not as bad as some other areas of the county that are even worse. So I do think that at some level, they're going to be doing something at the county. They're going to have to do something in the county that's going to probably require some, you know, massive amounts of funding to fix this issue and address with this issue in the long term. And we may be able to benefit from that movement because, you know, when you talk sanitary sewer, that usually goes hand in hand with water. Also.
Yeah, I'm looking at the figure 3 in the report that's in your report, and it has top 10 ranked sewer projects, and one of them, the D7-A, dips into Pinecrest. It looks like it's along US 1. And if I'm reading that correctly, what it says is there are a persistent fail. First off, there's almost nothing in the residential areas relative for septic tanks. It's not even marked. This project goes from, looks like Coconut Grove down into Pinecrest. It looks like it's around the US 1 corridor. It claims that there are two persistent failure septic or persistently compromised septic tanks. And out of the 2,688 tanks in that area, that 2,682 tanks are classified not at risk. And that's projecting into 2040. Is that right? They're telling us we don't have a septic tank problem. We can live with our septic tanks up until 2040 and it's not a problem. I mean, that sounds, first off, counterintuitive, off against almost any other data that we've looked at relative to tanks. And I don't expect an answer now because it's buried in the report.
But there's a section in this report, and I'll go through it. And
yeah, I mean, it's just something we need to talk about and digest. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, would they classify Pinecrest tanks as at risk in the near term? I mean, is it a project that the county would take on? If the tanks aren't at risk and there's no level of sea level rise compromising them, then it's not really a project. And everything I've heard until now is that these tanks are at risk, and if they're not leaking into the aquifer right now, they will be shortly. But what I'm reading in this report is that's not the case.
What I was mentioning is in Pinecrest is not the worst areas of the county. They have, and I have to go through here to see what location, what I'm mentioning to you is where it's actually written, but I've had meetings with Lee Hefty from Durham, who explains that even now there are areas that have intermittent septic system failures when there is, you know, obviously ground saturation, when you've had a lot of rain events specifically. So I don't think when you compare us to other areas of the county, we're definitely not even close to having the problems that other county areas have. But I do think that the county will likely address the sanitary sewer issues that are county-wide as a county-wide effort. because it's a lot of money. So they will likely do something. I think I've spoken and heard through the grapevine that they're looking at potentially doing GOB bonding for that. And like, I think that Commissioner Regalado, I've heard again through just discussions with different people that have spoken to her, because I haven't had a chance to meet her yet, that she has an interest potentially in doing something that's a little more meaningful from a county perspective, countywide perspective, to deal with the sanitary sewer issues. So I will go through it as we go through the rest of council agenda and mention where in there it talks about specifically the failures in Pinecrest, because there is a table somewhere in here. I just got to find it.
Yeah, all right. It's just an interesting report. Evidently, the threshold is the water, the groundwater level's got to be within 2 feet of the septic tank for it to be compromised. And I don't know how deep our groundwater is here, but either way, okay, that's worthwhile to peek. Any other questions on her?
The other part of my report was a request that I forwarded to council from Regions Bank to allow.
Hold on, you see, Doug had one question on your report.
Okay, sorry.
You know what it's gonna be, Yossi, that dreaded bridge.
What bridge?
Our bridge.
Oh, they haven't told us anything.
Oh, I thought they were gonna tell us something by now.
No,
Okay.
nothing new to report. The minute I know something, you'll know, because it'll be in my follow-up report. So if you don't see something written on there, it's because they haven't given us anything.
Okay. Thanks.
Let us know what happens.
Yes. So Regions Bank, I put the email on, I forwarded that email request to council where they're asking for extended construction hours.
Oh, shit.
They're asking for 24-hour construction hours. Is that not correct?
Correct. And the only thing that they would stop is at 2 a.m. on late, Sunday mornings.
Oh, how nice of them.
Otherwise,
So
they're
what are they building? The second
It's like my
tower of the
neighbors.
World Trade Center? Why do they need a 24-hour building schedule?
based on what they've advised, their issue is just in order to meet this deadline that they have, apparently the federal government gives them a, specific timeline where they must complete a project, and they will be coming up on that deadline. And so in order to meet that, they've asked for special consideration.
The federal deadline, is that specific to the Pinecrest problem or the Pinecrest project, or is that a federal deadline across the entire country?
It's across the entire country.
Is this a new deadline that they were unaware of when they started the project?
No.
Hi everyone. I don't know if you can hear me. This is Marissa Neufeld.
Hey, Marissa.
Marissa represents Regions Bank.
She's got her hand up.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if you were able to see. If it's
We
okay
can't
with
see you.
I'm not sure why I have my camera on. I don't know if it's something on the
That's okay.
village clerk's end.
We can hear you though.
Okay, if the council would allow me a few moments, we have a very brief, I promise you it's only 4 slides. One of them is a picture, explanation about this request. And I think that it addresses the council's concerns. And I also have a representative from the contractor, Menemsha, present, and a vice president from Regions Bank present as well, in case there's any questions that I can't answer specifically. But we heard the concerns from council. They were expressed to us by the village manager. And so we've prepared some information to hopefully address those concerns. I am going to show my screen. Is everyone able to see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So I think everybody is familiar with the site. We are on Pinecrest Parkway and 124th Street. And we were last before council in June when we were actually the very first item that this council, the very first quasi-judicial item that this council took virtually. So at that time, we did receive our site plan approval, and we had already experienced several delays due to COVID. Our hearing had been pushed back. Nothing that staff or council could have done differently. We were the very first item as soon as we found a way to present virtually. But that kind of started the domino effect of delays that our team experienced. And so I just wanted to give a very high level explanation for the request. And like Yossi mentioned, it is largely driven by a federal approval. We are required to obtain an approval that's valid for 1 year. And given the timing of the lease expiration at the nearest branch, which is currently at the Falls, there is a chance that Pinecrest and the surrounding area could potentially go dark once the Falls location closes, and if we're not able to open this branch. We would also be at risk of losing the federal approval. And so that's really where the urgency comes from. I do want to emphasize that this is not a blanket request for extended hours. We see this request as extremely limited in duration. We're only seeking a 90-day time limit, and we anticipate that if we can have this request, these extended hours, that we would complete construction by mid-April. And that would allow us to train staff and have the branch open and prevent a loss of essential banking business for the Pinecrest area. Menemsha is the contractor, and they have been working closely with regions to reduce and minimize any impact on the surrounding community. So with respect to public safety, we have secured the site on all sides with construction fencing, and the site is highly monitored. In addition, the contractor has meetings regularly with all subcontractors on site, and there's extensive coordination that happens. Dust and debris, there's a whole entire protocol to ensure that there's no off-site dust and debris. The site is routinely cleaned. There's different protocols used with application of a calcium chloride and a water that help to minimize any dust. And I know that there was a concern about noise. And even though we are on Pinecrest Parkway here, we will, whenever possible, schedule any of the noisier types of activities for during the regular hours. And we will try to minimize any of those activities from being in the extended hours. And lastly, I wanted to just mention that it is company policy in their handbook. This contractor takes a good neighbor approach. They are going to be readily available to address concerns. And I had discussed with them the possibility of providing the village with weekly status updates. So they went ahead and prepared this PDF, which is their weekly status report. And this is something that if the council would like this to happen, I can make this available to staff, and anybody who would like to see it can see it. And it's a very in-depth report that would be provided weekly, that would provide things like a 3-week look-ahead schedule, an update on, housekeeping and safety measures. And then it would also include several on-site photos of the ongoing work. And then just to summarize, we are requesting this for a limited 90-day duration. I understand that the hours do seem, the 24/7 is a lot. We do not anticipate using that all of the time. Obviously, the intent with that request was that we have the flexibility to work during those windows, and we didn't have to potentially lose time by going back and forth to the village with exact, schedules of different things on site like concrete pours and etc. But we definitely don't anticipate using that full window, and it would be for the limited 90-day duration. And like I mentioned, we also are running up against that federal deadline. So I really do hope that this this doesn't happen, but if we did go beyond the 90-day, we would be willing to come back before the council in, let's say, 60 days if we think that there's a possibility of that, to request an extension. But like I said, the team is confident that construction will be complete in 90 days. We will provide the weekly update report to the village. And I'm also providing 3 phone numbers here for 2 of which are our contractor staff who can be available for any emergencies, any issue, if there's any concern, and a representative from CBRE. I'm also providing my contact information. I do have a very good working relationship with village staff, and they know that they can always reach me if there's ever an issue. But I would provide any of these numbers and make them available in case there's any issue. So really that's the summary, that's the reasoning behind the request. And I am available for questions and can help funnel you to the proper team members if I'm not able to answer them.
So can
Shannon, go ahead.
I'm sorry, the question I had.
Hold on, Diana's going.
Go ahead, Anna, go ahead.
You go first. You go first and you go
So
second.
under
Sorry.
our ordinance, Madam Manager, what are the construction hours that they find so onerous that they won't be able to complete the project within? What does our code currently allow them to do?
Code allows them to begin construction Monday through Friday, starting at 7 in the morning and ending, I want to say at 7 at night or 6 o'clock at night. And then on the weekends, they have shortened hours and definitely nothing on Sundays.
No construction whatsoever on Sundays.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And what we've done, and in particular when there's road work, we have allowed like specific projects that, to kind of minimize road work to happen outside of those hours, because those are smaller timeframes, usually don't last more than a week or 2 to get whatever, if there's major road work happening. But this goes beyond what they want to do on the road work. It goes to what they want to do on their property.
The only occasion that I have to recall this council as a matter of upending our construction hours was for a specific 48-hour window for FPL because of the way they needed to install their mega poles.
Right.
To my knowledge, to your knowledge, have we ever granted a 90-day, 24-hour construction window to anyone within the village?
Yeah.
I have a vague recollection of a project that we allowed. I think we allowed Lexus to work with inside their building as long as it didn't make noise. But yeah,
we did allow.
Let her finish.
well, I don't have a clear recollection. I have a vague recollection of our
I'm such
allowing
delayed, I can't hear you.
No, we allowed windows like you said. I'm comfortable with if this was indoor work and there's no noise, then that's fine. So if they got to the indoor stage where they're painting, they're putting down tile, they're building the desks, they're doing some electrical work inside. But has anybody spoken to, what is it, Malanga, the restaurant next door? Because everyone's eating outdoors. The French restaurant that's in the shopping center right behind them. Did anybody speak to Richard and say, hey, by the way, we're going to have an excavator and a concrete chipper chipping on concrete at 10 o'clock at night when you're eating outdoors, or on Sunday afternoon when you're having breakfast at the French restaurant? Oh, by the way, don't worry about the bulldozer or the block layers that are there cussing and swearing. I got the music playing. I mean, I don't know.
I have one additional comment. I think the council members and village manager brought up a good point. If I could just add one additional point. We do have an MOT approved for road work in the evenings. There is going to be some offsite road work in connection with our project, and we will be overlapping as much as possible the work on site with those extended hours that were already granted as part of the MOT. So I just did want to mention that we've considered that, and we'll do that.
Yeah, hold on. Marissa, let's let Doug finish, and then we'll go to Shannon. And I apologize, I'm having a hard time hearing for whatever reason right now. So Doug, and then Shannon. Anna, you're frozen. I think everybody else is frozen on my screen too. Okay, go ahead.
So anyway, so I'd like to think, so I'm a lot more comfortable if you were at the indoor stage and doing indoor work. And I would like to know if anybody has spoken to, if the contractor or anybody has spoken to the two neighboring, Malenga or Richard on the property behind. And the, what was the other one? Well, those are the two major ones. I mean, has anybody reached out to Malenga and said, hey, is it okay if Saturday night that we have a excavator running next door, the concrete truck comes and it's pouring concrete? Has anybody asked them?
Marissa, can you answer that?
Yes, we haven't received any complaint from the neighbors next door.
Oh, excuse me. Can somebody asked a question? Has anybody asked Malenga or Richard Wood and reached out to them and asked if they're okay on Saturday evening when people are having dinner with an excavator and a concrete truck pouring concrete or block layers out there laying block? It's either yes or no, not, oh, did they know? Because a lot of people don't know that there's this little ordinance on the Village of Pinecrest's desk right now saying we want to work 24 hours a day up until 2 in the morning on Sunday.
So the question is, have we coordinated with the commercial neighbors?
We haven't. We definitely would be willing to reach out to them. We'd also be willing to curb some of the weekend or, the Friday, Saturday hours as needed, if that would be, more palatable to the council.
Okay, Shannon, you wanted to go? I'm sorry for taking
Two questions. Ms. Galliano, have we had any residents' complaints to date over the noise and the construction, to your knowledge?
No, there have not.
Okay. I guess my second point is a point, not a question. I think that COVID obviously has presented many challenges for everybody. I appreciate Anna's concern over precedent, and I also appreciate what Doug is saying. And I think that these are extraordinary times, and perhaps we should try and support regions with the caveat that they please coordinate with the adjacent business owners. And I think that Doug's suggestion is great, to do indoor work after hours whenever possible. But I would be inclined to allow them.
Excellent. And this needs, Guido, does this need a consensus, or is this a vote?
Yes, sir. You need either a consensus or a vote, depending on which direction the council would like to go.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes, ma'am. I didn't hear a word he said. I'm
sorry. If and when the council takes a vote, what I can mention and suggest is also that if the council's inclined to allow it, that we do so with the caveat that if we start getting a lot of complaints and they can't be resolved with our working with the project manager, that the council would authorize me to pull that authorization effective immediately, until we can work out those logistics.
Shannon, would you like to make a motion?
I move.
With your so you motion to approve with the condition that they reach out to the neighboring commercial properties and let them know?
And with the caveat that the manager could pull that authority in the event that it becomes an issue for local residents or adjacent businesses.
Okay, good. Does anybody want to second that? Then we'll have a conversation.
I don't understand that motion. So it's reaching out to the neighbors and get their approval that it's okay to work on Saturday and have a concrete truck pouring concrete while their constituents, while their patrons are having dinner.
You want to get their approval, or do you want to reach out to them and?
So what are you going to say? Well, we're reaching out to you, but we're going to go ahead and have that concrete truck pumping concrete at 6 o'clock on Saturday night. Don't worry, the council's already approved it. Really?
Well, did we mention we want to schedule their indoor activities during the peak hours of the adjacent commercial and at night?
But they don't even have a shell up yet. If they get to the indoor. So let me ask you,
all right,
can I ask you a question about construction? You might not know, but I kind of know. But if they're laying block, isn't it possible, instead of asking to work all those hours, isn't it possible just to bring, instead of 3 block layers, bring 8 block layers on the job site? I know with me and my job, if I have 4 guys on the job working, I can get a lot more done on a job site with 12 guys working. Is it possible that they have 10 roofers up on the roof working instead of 2? Because I've been on these job sites and I see that there's 1 electrician working. Trust me, if they had 8 electricians working, if they pulled it, if Regions went ahead and spent the money and said to the electrician, hire 10 people to come in here and get this project done, they could hire 10 people. There's a lot of people out of work right now. If they had a chance to get the stucco guys, instead of hiring 1, 2 stucco guys to work 8 hours a day, hire 9 stucco guys to work an 8-hour day. You're a lot more productive. So I don't understand.
And council member,
the contractor hasn't thought that he can just bring triple the more people on the job site instead of having to work 24 hours with 2 guys or 2 people.
Yes, Marissa.
Have they ran that scenario? Because I'm sure if they ran that scenario, they would see that, wow, you know what? Because we have 9 stucco guys on the job site today. We got it all stuccoed in one day instead of 3. 8 plumbers can do more than 1 plumber.
You better hurry up, Marissa.
Okay, on that point, council member, I just want to say that the extended hours allows us to actually add additional shifts. And right now, construction, because of COVID, as you can imagine, we're trying to reduce the numbers of workers on site. That's one of the main protocols in order to reduce COVID spread on job sites. So we do that by extending hours and introducing additional shifts. And that reduces the number of workers that are exposed to each other, but allows the work to take place, on the same schedule.
Well, I would support this if you got approval from the neighboring restaurants that said it's okay for you to pump concrete on Saturday night at 8 o'clock at night.
I think we could agree that
if you can go next door and get Richard Woodard, you can get him that French restaurant and the Thai restaurant that's right next door too, and the taco place. If you can say, hey, is it okay that we work when you're serving food at 8 o'clock at night? I'm okay with it.
I think we can.
I don't think it's going to spill into 3 blocks into the neighborhood.
But the manager said this is conditioned on not getting complaints from the neighbors. So, all right, let's do it this way. Shannon, you got a motion? You made a motion. Does anybody want to second that motion?
I'll second it.
Anna seconds the motion. All right, so let's just call the question. Guido, we want to do this. We just do the
Just so I understand, Mr. Mayor, the motion is approving the waiver for a 90-day period, subject to notice to the adjacent commercial properties and the manager having the authority to terminate the waiver if necessary.
Shannon, is that correct?
Under what conditions?
Okay.
Yes.
Councilmember,
Hold on. Doug has a question. Doug asked what?
No, I'm just asking in what conditions would the manager have the authority to disapprove it? She gets one complaint, 5 or 10.
Yossi?
What I would do is if I get a complaint, I'll call the project manager, say, listen, we have these issues. Can we, we need to address it, fix it so it doesn't continue to happen. If I continue to get recurring same complaint, then we pull the plug. I'll tell them, listen, either this stops or we're going to have to pull the plug. And that's it. I don't foresee if we start getting a lot of complaints specifically from like the residents, because now their quality of life is being affected, then they're going to have to, slow it down. They're going to have to figure out another way to go about it and do it within the hours that we allow construction. It's just that simple. So I think as long as, nobody's complaining, great. If the residents or the businesses start complaining because it's affecting their business, then Regions Bank has to make adjustments.
Yeah, I think she'll shut it down if there's complaints.
Right.
The point being that the manager would have the.
We need to work with those neighbors, and if they're not willing to do that, then we shut it down.
All right,
And
Shannon.
our team would be willing to agree to those conditions.
They're not going to let you have a chance.
So the manager would have authority to revoke the waiver.
Correct. Okay, so we're all set. Guido?
Councilmember Abbott?
Yes, very hesitantly, and I just want to say my 2 cents. I am a little nervous about it, but I just want to remind council that one of the reasons why this project was so delayed is because we worked with them to get, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we worked with them to get that exit on US 1 approved, which got approved. And I think that's going to make such a huge difference than just having the 124th entrance and exit. So I'm willing to give this a go under these conditions as proposed.
Councilmember Del Prado?
Yes.
Councilmember Hokumer?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kraft?
Yes, and then the same thing in Katie's said, that I would hope that the manager, if she gets a complaint from any of those restaurateurs next door of people dining outdoors, would shut it down immediately. Not say, well, you can try next week, next Saturday or next Friday night.
I'm sorry, Mr. Vice Mayor, what's your vote?
Yes.
And Mayor Cordino?
Yes, and I echo what Katie said. Echo.
Motion carries, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much. And we do promise to be good neighbors and to deliver this essential service within 90 days.
Thank you, Marissa.
Thanks so much.
Marissa. Good job.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry. Geez, I keep trying to jump. All right. Anything? We got that. Mr. Clerk, your report?
Just real quick, Mr. Mayor, thank you for your indulgence this evening with our technical issues. I think I set the expectations low, anticipating that some of these things would likely happen. At the council's direction at your December meeting about preparing for hybrid meetings, possibly, beyond, certainly during the pandemic and beyond, I have been working to get a consultant to review our AV in the chamber. Obviously, the holidays slowed that process down, but I'm hopeful in the next few weeks to make progress on that. And perhaps not for the February meeting, but perhaps for the March meeting, we can have a revamped AV system in the council chamber to get us going in the future on this type of hybrid meeting. So thank you again for your indulgence.
Yeah, it's new to everybody. Don't worry about it. No plan survives contact with the enemy. So we anticipated a rocky start, but we just got to have patience. We'll get it going by October, November. This will be just like old hat, right? We're going to be fine.
Hope so.
Don't worry about it.
I hope so.
Mr. Attorney?
I don't have anything in particular to report. I will note that I'm going to, and I didn't even have a chance to talk with the manager about this, but to the extent that we've lost revenue in the Banyan Bowl or the entertainment venue because of COVID, the last round of CARES Act funding made available money for venues, entertainment venues. And so we are in the process of researching whether we can qualify for that reimbursement from federal funds. And we'll be reporting to the manager and then of course to you if we're able to find the authorization to do that.
Excellent.
Oh, and I also want to note that as you mentioned earlier, the manager and I are working on a draft of a county lobbying strategy memo. I provided her with that earlier this week, and we're set to discuss that shortly and refine it, and then we'll bring that to you probably as we'll share it with you prior, but we can discuss it during this strategic planning meeting.
Are we working on the county permitting issue?
Yes.
Okay.
We've drafted a resolution. Commissioner McGee has suggested that he would sponsor that at the request of Pinecrest and Cutler Bay. And so we have a couple of versions of a draft resolution that we're going to share with the manager. We'd like to have one resolution for Commissioner McGee. So hopefully Pinecrest and Cutler Bay agree on the wording. I may be able to influence that.
Got it. Thank you.
Before we move on, can I ask the village manager to give us an update on the Palermo property? We discussed it quite extensively last time we met, and I'd like to know where we stand on that.
So yeah, we are very near to coming to final agreement on everything with them. So if we can potentially, with the assumption that we will come to an agreement, I just want to go over it with council. And while the village attorney is here, I had a conversation with Chad, Mitch, earlier today to just kind of get the lay of the land. And what Chad explained is that once an option to purchase is entered into, with the caveat that it would still be pending ratification of council, then the law requires a minimum of 30-day notice for the official public hearing. So, you know, just for argument's sake, just with the timing that exists right now, if we were to come and be ready to go and go ahead with an option to purchase agreement, drafting and entering into that, we wouldn't definitely not be able to make the next meeting agenda. So we would likely either be looking for a special meeting sometime in late February. Meanwhile, the village would be doing all the due diligence, title search, environmental phase 1 study, and surveys of the property just to make sure that we know what we would be getting ourselves into. And then council would be taking formal action at a public hearing that's been duly noticed with a minimum of 30-day notification, right? Am I saying that correctly, Mitch? And then in the interim, I have to still sort out the financing part of it. And there's 2 scenarios for the financing. One would be that we do a full cash offer and then later on apply for the loan or a bond to pay for that purchase, in which case we just need 1 vote. But if we go with the route of just borrowing the money up front, that will also require 2 readings. We typically do anything that would put us out, you know, to obtain a loan or any kind of bond to pay for something like this. It would require 2 different readings. So again, timing, I don't know, because we're still working details, but it's looking good. I think we're gonna hopefully be able to come to a final agreement, and I'll be discussing individually with each of you where we're at. I have had discussions already with all of you. I just want to put on your radar and let Council Member Kraft discuss his idea. He says that he's asked that potentially council reconsider putting an offer again on that property that's on 98th and 67th, because apparently that's come back on the market again. If you recall, at some point, council had approved, authorized me to make an offer on that property, but when I contacted and to make inquiries on that property, but when we did, it had already been sold. And so he wanted to put that out there. I don't know if he wants to discuss the idea, but since he felt we might be in the mood to look at additional open space and kind of try to come at it from a package deal angle. Mayor, we can't hear him at all because you're mute. I don't know.
Well, he's not saying anything.
Okay.
There you go. You got it? You ready?
No, I think it would be, could be a package deal. It's a property that's still has the pines. Not much expense needed to bring the property up to park status. Doesn't need any buildings. Maybe needs a path. Maybe needs a little bit of groundwork, landscaping work, but that's it.
What's the suggestion? What's the idea?
Well, I would say I mean, nobody's discussed financing. We don't know how we finance the one on Kendall. But if, let's say, for instance, it's a bond, is it at that point worth to put that property in it too, in the bond, and buy and hold? I think it's a prime piece of real estate. It's a beautiful little pocket park, walk-to park. It's on a linear path there, the future linear path down with them.
Well, do we have to authorize her to look into it? My concern with the first one was, can we do it and afford it without having to raise any taxes or anything like that? What's the other property cost, do you think?
Well, it's probably $1 million. I mean,
she'll have to tell me. I mean, does it fit? Can we do it?
Oh.
I mean, I don't know prices, but lots in Pinecrest on average for an acre in U1 go for $1 million. I have no idea what they're asking for that.
Right. Okay. You're right. I got you.
That's probably the average for a large acre estate.
I mean, if there's an interest on council, I would suggest we go about it the same way we did with Palermo, that we do an appraisal and then make an offer and see what, or I talk to everybody, come up with a game plan, and then make an offer and go in that, direction if we're able to come to an agreement with the seller.
The attraction of that property,
know what they're asking for.
Full of pine forest. In the interim, the property was purchased. Most of the pine forest was ripped out. They've now got approved plans for that lot, and they're trying to sell it for a significant profit with the approved plans. So the botanic interest in the property is basically gone, and we'd be paying a significant increase for a development amenity that the village has no interest in. So I don't see the argument for it, considering we've got over 3 acres, 10 blocks north on the table.
Anybody else have a comment?
I'm lukewarm.
Okay.
I mean, I'm lukewarm about it.
I wasn't, I'm sorry, I was not
Shannon,
privy to the conversations you had in the past. But I understand from what Anna says that the attraction were the pine trees. I drove by the property and it's pretty clear right now. I don't know how quickly those trees grow, but I think they cleared it out.
They definitely took out a lot of the pine trees that were the original draw for that property for council. You know, could it be replanted? Could it be restored to a pine land preserve? Yes, it's a acre. You know, it's up to you if you want me to kind of fish around and see what, you know, the lowest I can try to see. You know, it's up to you. If there's really no interest, then we move on, and I'll let you know what's happening on the other property as I get more information.
Well, I guess you might want to fish around and look at it, and then report back. But on the first Palermo property, the process would be if they were to accept an offer, then you have to put together a notification to the public and then hold a public hearing within X amount of time. Is that correct?
So the process, if we make a once we make a final offer and they accept it, the village attorney and I would work to draft an option to purchase agreement. And I would enter into that option to purchase agreement on the agreed upon price based on discussions that we have offline, because it's obviously a price negotiation. Once we enter into that option to purchase agreement, there's a clause in that agreement that provides for a certain amount of time for the village to do its due diligence. That part of the due diligence requires doing survey work, doing environmental study work, and just doing title search, making sure everything is clear and good to go. Then as part of the council's actual public hearing on it, the law requires a minimum of 30-day notice of a meeting. But based on the fact that, for example, today's the 12th, the next meeting we have is the 9th. There's no, you know, even if we were to do something tomorrow, there's no way any of this would happen, for example, at that meeting. So at the earliest, assuming, you know, everything goes, because it is moving quickly, we would likely be aiming towards either doing a special meeting in late February and or a second meeting in March, especially if the financing option that we do right away involves putting out a loan that will require a first and second hearing. So at best case scenario, we're talking something like where it would happen late February and then in March, or, you know, move it a little further along in the calendar. But that seller has indicated that they would obviously want to move this as quickly as they can, but we have, you know, things we have to do. So it takes time. It's not going to happen, you know, overnight. So I think 30 to 45 days to get everything done, if we can, you know, shore it up, is reasonable. And so we would just need to make sure, you know, we get a notice out there. Typically these notices, Guido, in the past when we do it, it's been put like in the Herald or something. How do we, what's considered a notice by the statute of the public hearing?
I have to admit, I do not have any recollection of doing any extraordinary notice for the purchase of properties. So I'll defer to the village attorney. But typically public notice can be as simple as just the posting of the agenda and or a notice itself. But I'll defer to the attorney, because I do not recall doing any extraordinary noticing on acquisitions of property in the past.
I'm not aware of a specific format for the notice other than what Chad advised you regarding the timing of the notice. We will make sure that we fully advise the clerk as to the appropriate notice requirements.
So would council, assuming we can move this along, and would you be okay having a special meeting specifically for that purpose, or just push the whole thing out further to March? What's your preference?
My concern would be, I don't want to approve it for the last time or the final time at a special meeting. I think I would like to come to the council once, discuss it, give everybody give the public the identification that this thing that we're going to purchase this property and that's going to come, and then approve it at a subsequent council meeting, which should be a regular council meeting, so that they have the ability to see it coming, know it's real, study it for a month, and then come back and comment to us and get it done. But a special meeting would be a bad idea.
Okay, would you be okay with the finance, if we move the project and they accept our offer, would you be okay with having first reading on the financing discussion at the February meeting, and then the final hearing at the official public meeting, which will take place, I guess, in March, at the March meeting?
Yeah, that doesn't bother me. My concern is that it come to 2 council meetings, just like an ordinance or something like that, so the public can't come to the meeting and say, I never heard of this before, even though this is the second time. It'll be before us really 4 times before then, but at least twice in an official capacity would make me most comfortable, even though it may not be necessary. And does anybody else have thoughts on that? I mean, I'm open. I'd like to have a discussion about how to do that.
I echo your thoughts, Mr. Mayor. I think the more above board and transparent the entire process can be, the better. And I think having things on the agenda at official council meetings is one of the ways that we do that.
Katie, what do you think?
I agree.
All right, Shannon, anything? Doug?
Sounds good to me.
All right.
So I'll work on getting all this done, getting the finance answers, and putting at least the beginnings of the financial process in the agenda for the February meeting, with the final ratification that would occur then, if council so wishes, in March for that public meeting. And with the aiming that we would close on the property, if council approves it, the day after that March meeting, we could potentially arrange for the scheduling of that closing. Okay. And that will be my instructions to the seller's representative. Meanwhile, we'll work out all the other stuff. Does council want to see the option to purchase agreement before I would execute anything? Do you want to see a draft of that?
Do we have to vote on it?
We don't, right? Because your vote will be, in essence, you've already given me authorization to enter negotiations. So this would just be putting that into writing so that we hold them to whatever agreed upon price we've come to an agreement on.
As long as we don't have to commit to anything until we vote.
It's all subject to your final ratification. Right. And we can time it so that we even say on this day is when you will be taking that up for final decision. Okay. All right, Mitch. So you have we have our marching orders on that. And the other thing, I just want to take this opportunity, Mr. Mayor, point of privilege, to thank our village attorney profusely for all the work that his staff and he has done on our FEMA appeal. I forwarded the document to all of you so you could see the good work that they did to cover my behind on the issue. And I just want to formally thank him and his staff for really excellent work that they did in preparing that brief. I'm told, and Mitch can probably share with council, that we had the initial hearing before the appeal board, and that staff is very hopeful based on the questions that were put towards the FEMA staff that they are likely going to rule. They're cautiously optimistic that they'll rule in our favor based on just the line of question, and we'll probably have an answer, I'm told, by January 27th.
Oh, great. Good news. Good job, Mitch.
No, I'm not sure about that timeline. I believe the response from FEMA will be filed by January 27th, and we will then have an opportunity to reply to the response.
Okay. And then they have 90 days.
Yeah, and then there's the hearing. They will set a hearing date. What they did ask is whether we would waive the live hearing and allow them to rule on the motions. And, we lean toward doing that. We lean toward allowing them to rule on the motions without having to have a live hearing. However, we are reserving that until we have reviewed the response from FEMA.
But based on what the line of questionings, they were very optimistic.
Based on a line of questionings, I think it was intended by first of all, the whole arbitration panel appeared at the hearing, which is unusual. Usually a single arbitrator would appear. And second, they spent about an hour grilling the lawyers for FEMA who were not prepared for a substantive questioning. And I think that they were probably trying to signal to them that they were somewhat incredulous that FEMA would take such a harsh position to essentially allow a forfeiture over one day, which was subject to interpretation. So based on that, we were somewhat optimistic with their position, or that they might have persuaded the FEMA lawyers to sit down and talk with us about changing their position. That has not happened yet. So as I said, their response is due, the FEMA lawyers' response is due January 27th. We'll see what they say, and then we'll make a decision as to whether we want to have a live hearing and present evidence, or whether we feel that that's unnecessary and that our chances are better if we forego the live hearing and allow the arbitrators to rule on the paper, on the filings.
Great, good news.
Thank you, Mitch, very much so.
Good work, everybody. Okay, next on the list, let's permit fees for tab 11.
That's a resolution of the Village of Pinecrest, Florida, amending the zoning and planning permit fee schedule, providing for an effective date. Mr. Mayor, this item does require a public hearing under the Code of Ordinances. However, there are no speakers registered to speak.
Mr. Clerk, is there somebody on in the waiting room from the planning director and also the consultant? Can you please let them into the meeting? George, hey.
Hello.
How are you?
Hey, George.
Good evening.
Okay, so we're on the item of the zoning and planning permit fee schedule. So if you want to take over the presentation.
Yes, sure. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. As you may recall, on your December 8th meeting, I made a presentation on the building permit fee recommendations, as well as the planning and public works fees. So these fees were presented to you last month. I think they're being formalized tonight via resolution. Just to go over some highlights, your planning and zoning fees have not been amended in over 10 years. What we've done here is myself and Mr. Olmsted working together to streamline some of the fees and make them more based on cost of services provided. So what you have here tonight in your resolution, you'll see some of the fees are decreased significantly. Some will go up slightly. As we point out, currently your fees are inclusive. Some of your planning fees are inclusive of other associated costs, such as advertisement, outside legal costs, planning consultants, transportation engineers. So what we've done is we've separated out these fees to a large part on the actual cost, the staff cost of providing these permitting services, and then taken the additional costs to be charged to the permit applicant on a per permit basis based on what the cost to the village is. So I guess aside from that, Steve, I don't know if you want to add anything, certainly open to any questions.
The only thing that I would add is that in your report on page 3, the subdivision plat pre-application fee that you showed as current fee of $1,500 was actually $700. And rather than showing a recommended fee of $1,456, we're proposing an increase to $975. I think we spoke about that, but it's the only discrepancy in your report. And then in addition to that, with some of the fees, there's some ancillary language that is included in the actual fee schedule within the resolution that might not be in your report, but that's minor.
Any questions on this one?
No, I
We
think
rolled over this last month, right?
Yeah, over the last couple of meetings.
I didn't hear it. Anna, did you have something?
I said, I think we've beaten this horse to death over the last couple of meetings. I think we understand the methodology. We know how they're arriving at the numbers. And so this is probably an up or down. And anyone watching who doesn't understand the methodology is welcome to go back and watch the previous 6.5 hours of presentations in the last 2 council meetings.
You know, we're getting very good at beating these horses, and I kind of like doing it. So I guess you don't have any questions, is what you're saying. All right.
Whoa.
All right, then let's get a motion going.
I move to accept the resolution as is with the adjustments pointed out by Steve Olmsted.
I'll second.
All right, motion is second. Tito?
Councilmember Abbott,
Yes.
Councilmember Del Prado,
Yes.
Councilmember Hokumer,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kraft,
Yes.
Mayor Cordino.
Yes.
Motion
Bring in the
carries.
next
The
horse.
resolution is adopted. Your next item, Mr. Mayor, is a resolution of the Village of Pinecrest, Florida, adopting the Public Works fee schedule, providing for an effective date.
Motion,
I move.
second. Anybody?
I'll second.
Shannon, Mr. Prado seconds. Any discussion? All right, fire away.
Councilmember Abbott,
Yes.
Councilmember Del Prado,
Yes.
Councilmember Hokumer,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kraft,
Yes.
Mayor Cordino.
Yes.
Motion
All right.
carries. The resolution is adopted. Your next item is a resolution of the Village of Pinecrest, Florida, awarding contract for tree services for the Pinecrest Gardens Upper Garden Project, providing for an effective date.
All right, who's got this one?
Mr. Mayor, this is an after the fact award, but I had gotten approval ahead of time from the majority of council because of timing issues to keep the project moving. So it's an after the fact approval. However, Councilmember Kraft asked that I put it on for discussion as a discussion item as opposed to a consent agenda item because he just wanted to share his concerns about the project.
So we've already done this.
It's already been entered into. I spoke
ought to
to
be
everyone and I received authorization to go forward with executing this because of just timing that we didn't have a meeting coming up and it would slow the project down, and you all agreed to that. He was the one person who had concerns with moving forward. I don't know if he wants to discuss anything.
Well, I'm just opposed to spending thousands of dollars on a black oak tree that's not in good shape, and an oak tree that's in fair shape at best. That there's no guarantee that they'll even live, maybe 50% at best. So that's why I said no.
But it's already done, right?
Yeah, but I said no. You guys four said yes.
Oh. So what do you want us
I
to
assume you four said yes. I don't know.
Yossi, what do you want us to do with this?
Again, you're just formalizing something that already.
Formalizing your yes over the
So
phone.
just on.
Oh, we're voting on this.
Yes.
Voting formally to retroactively approve something that's already been done.
voted over the phone. Now you just gotta put it.
What happens if we say no?
You can say, I don't know, I'd have to cancel the contract, go back and talk to our attorneys because we entered into it based on your.
We already moved the trees, didn't we?
No.
We've root pruned some of the trees and done some of the prep work already. We've
Oh,
already.
okay, so they're not moved yet. So you don't have to move them back.
Correct, yeah, no.
Oh, God.
Can I ask,
Keep the dead
Madam
tree.
Manager, is the issue that Councilmember Kraft has with this contract typical of municipal contracts of this type? Is there something unusual about this contract?
No, there isn't. There isn't. I think based on what he just mentioned, he just feels there's two, I guess, approaches to handling new development. In some cases, when you have new development, you just basically demolish everything and then start from scratch. And in some cases, that is the cheaper approach. In this particular case, that's not the approach we took from a botanical perspective. Because we are a botanical garden, took the approach and instructed the landscape architect to try to protect any large trees, because from the get-go, we wanted to be able to have the canopy that exists in that area right now. That's a very shaded area of the garden, and we wanted to try to salvage that. Vice Mayor is correct that these large trees, the larger the trees are, you have to do a lot of prep work ahead of time before you relocate them. And the chances of the trees dying, there is a chance and a high chance that they die. But based on our horticulturalists' input and the landscape architect's input, they feel that all these things that they're doing currently in anticipation of relocating the trees will help ensure that they live. But there's always a chance that they might not. But with this process comes a higher cost. And he was, being a little more fiscally conservative on that end when he said that we should have just approached it differently and just come in and just bought in all new trees. And, maybe they wouldn't be as big as what's there now, but, he was willing to sacrifice that to save the money, which was not the approach that we took with the landscape architect when we gave them instructions on how to go about doing this project from a botanical perspective.
How many trees are in question?
Oh,
Nobody moves black olive trees that are in.
How many are
Can I ask, frankly, why we are having this discussion? Village Council does not make the choice for individual trees. We don't overrule the horticulturalist at Pinecrest Gardens and our landscape architect and staff. That's not our role. So I'm wondering whether there's a policy issue that Councilmember Kraft wants us to address, or whether we're sitting around, picking out the pavers for the side of the road, because that's not what council's role is. There is a policy issue. I'd like to know what it is.
I think the policy is he doesn't want you to move black olives. How many black olives are there?
One big black olive is not in good shape.
Oh, how much is that? How much of the 121 Yossi is the one big black olive?
I don't have that information, Mayor. I can advise council.
All mixed in the bid.
Right. We did get, so you understand, we got 3 quotes. So we bid out. We have 3 quotes. And based on that, we went with obviously the lower quote and went forward with that based on council's instructions previously.
Got it. Does anybody want to make a motion?
No, I need to understand here. Are we having this conversation because Councilmember Kraft has an issue with a single tree?
2 of the trees.
We're having this conversation because the
Relocating and
horticulturalist
relocating.
made a
Actually, a lot of
decision about
those are
saving
the
2 large trees in a project in Pinecrest Gardens? So what is the policy change that you are proposing for council?
Policy change.
Yes, this council deals with policy. What is the policy issue in this contract.
So council doesn't decide what types of playgrounds we put in, or lights, or colored concrete crosswalks, or anything like that?
Appropriately, no.
Or signage on US
No,
1?
council doesn't do that. Occasionally staff asks us for our opinion, but no, actually, that's not a policy issue.
Does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll move.
You've already
Second.
voted.
I guess we got to redo it.
Reassuring the vote.
I'll second.
All right, thank you. Okay. Either you got to call it, or we just say all in favor.
You can do a voice vote, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Yeah.
The motion passed.
Okay.
Okie dokie.
All right. The next item is the one on the Upper Gardens bid. I did send out a memo for council a couple days ago that showed the bid results. We didn't get the bid results till just a couple days ago, so we had put this on the agenda without the final recommendation. But based on the lowest bid, if I can pull up the memo. Do you need me to pull up the memo so you could see that?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Here
Here we go. So this is the memorandum I had already forwarded to council. The good news is that the low bidder is Lunacon, which is the same company that we worked with for the recent expansion of the community center. So we have a good established working relationship with that particular company. So it's my recommendation that we go ahead and move forward with the Upper Garden bid at that low bid price. And next month, we've already issued the RFP for the bond that will go to pay for all this. So you'll be considering that in first hearing at the next meeting. And assuming council moves forward with this award, we have everything volleyed to start construction within the next 2 weeks. So currently we're in demolition mode and prepping that site work with different contractors that we moved ahead of time to keep the ball rolling. And Lunacon, as part of their pre-bid conference, understands that time is of the essence, and they're ready to go within the next 2 weeks, start construction. Most importantly, on the elements that affect the grant from the state. So they're going to be initially focusing on the restrooms, the playground, and petting zoo area, and leave the inspiration center for later on in the project, just to make sure that we meet the deadlines for the grant, which is in April. So we're moving fast.
Right, we have a significant economic interest in approving this so that our ducks are in a row, because there's a lot of money on the table from that state grant, correct?
There's $200,000 available for the playground for that particular project. And then we've received other grants from other entities that all are going towards, elements of that project.
So yeah, I would move to approve it.
Second.
I'll second.
Any discussion about this? Shannon?
No.
Okay. Anybody? All right, motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed?
No.
You are opposed, you're not opposed? Oh, you're. All right, motion passes 4-1.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, was that a no vote, or no, he's not opposed?
Yeah, that's what I asked. It's a no vote.
No vote.
It's a yes.
He voted
he's
no.
opposed.
Okay.
Dude, were you guys the first time? How could you be against it the first time? It's only first resolution. All right, 15.
Okay. Next item, Mr. Mayor, is a resolution of the Village of Pinecrest, Florida, adopting parking restrictions on the 7700 block of Southwest 120th Street pursuant to Ordinance 2001-6, providing for an effective date.
Mr. Mayor, this was a resident request. We post a certain area in front of his property that is diagonal from the high school. We have had staff go out and review the area. There are concerns that would result in some continuous destruction of the swale area. It's not an ideal place for cars to pull over and stage for pickup. So staff is recommending approval of the parking restriction at this location.
Can I ask, are you going to post it no parking or no parking, no standing?
I believe the request was to put, just make it no parking, but we can make adjustments onto, you know, what we put on the sign. In some cases we've done during school hours specifically. I would suggest it does say no parking, no standing, because that's exactly what they do. They sit in their car and don't necessarily leave their car. So I would actually recommend doing it so that, you know, school days during certain hours, so that it's specifically tied to school time, even though based on what staff advised, that area is not good for parking at all. It's not a very wide area, so it's not suggested for long-term parking. But I guess if somebody had to pull over in an emergency, they can do so safely. So if you want to do it for school days, you know, no stopping or standing, no parking during certain school hour days, we can do it that way if that's your preference.
Well, if it's not appropriate anytime, why don't we just do it for the whole time?
If it's as bad as you say.
Yeah, the resident wanted it no parking, so that was their request.
No parking isn't going to cut it, because if the driver's sitting in the car, they're standing, they're not parked.
So no parking or standing, right?
Couldn't move them off the swale anyway. They're just standing. So and just, you know, make it a no parking, no standing area 24/7. It becomes known as that, and then you don't have any issues, and whatever improvements need to happen in the swale there can happen.
Right.
Agree.
I agree, especially because it says that it does not meet the minimum criteria for parallel parking. I mean, that becomes a safety hazard, right?
Right. Okay.
Motion?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Motion is second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimity. Okay, tab 16.
Next item is the resolution of the Village of Pinecrest, Florida, authorizing the village manager to enter into an agreement with Equistrata Services for the grant writing services, providing for an effective date.
So, this is extension basically of the current grant that we had. Last year, council authorized our entering into a grant agreement with this entity piggybacking off of another contract. And the arrangement with them is that we pay them a retainer and they develop 12 grants throughout the year on the village's behalf. We've had a lot of success and good working relationship with this particular entity. So my recommendation is that we extend that contract another year. So that would be what you would be authorizing, is that we go ahead and continue to use them for another year.
Yeah, they're bringing in way, way more than they're costing us. I think it's a very good investment. And frankly, given the results that they've been getting for us, it's a great price. So I would move that we approve that resolution.
I'll second.
And I know he's listening, so I'm sure he's very proud for that comment, because he does do a really good job.
That's good.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No? Okie dokie, vaccines.
Mr. Mayor, you already took action on that item? That was,
Oh,
that
we did that
resolution
already.
was,
We're
yes,
done.
sir, that was approved already. And then your final resolution is a resolution of the Village of Pinecrest, Florida, relating to a vacation of a public right-of-way. The village manager is requesting deferral of this item to February the 9th.
So I believe I've spoken to most of you. Just wanted to give you an update on this property. I don't know that we'll move forward with this in the long run. There's been a hiccup that came about after we had noticed this that involves one of the affected properties. Oh, correction, he does 8 grants, not 12 grants. He just texted me over the course of the year. But going back, there was one of the property owners that would be affected has raised an objection after we had gone through the process of noticing for this this action to take place. So I'm just asking for deferral to see if we can figure out a solution, and if not, then we're not going to move forward with this approach to the issue in this right of way. The main problem in this right of way is that there's a unpermitted fence that's been erected technically on public property. And the property owner that's being affected is somebody who has a pool who would like to do a perpendicular fence, but because the one that's existing is not permitted, it was causing an issue. So we've been working with that property owner to try to resolve the issues by vacating the right-of-way, because it's a right-of-way I don't believe will ever build out for a number of reasons, but because of this one objection of a northern neighbor, we may not be able to go forward with this approach. So we'll know more by the next meeting, and if we're not going to proceed that way, you just won't have it on the next agenda.
Or do we need a motion?
No.
No?
I wanted to give you an update on what it's about.
Perfect. Well,
You need
still early.
to be formal, you need a motion to defer.
Motion to defer.
I move to defer.
I second.
Motion in a second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion passes. Items deferred. Okay, well, that concludes our programming for the evening, correct?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just mentioned to some of you, depending on what's happening with the inauguration and just reports of whatever may or may not be happening, I'm going to potentially have the offices closed on that day, just waiting on some information from the local law enforcement authorities that have indicated there might be some issues of concern, in which case then we'll just let the employees stay home for the day and secure the building.
Be safe.
Right. So I'll let you know what we're going to do.
All right, with that, Jim usually used to do our motion to adjourn. Who wants to take that?
Oh, I think Otto has inherited that.
I want to fill those shoes. I move to adjourn.
All right. We're adjourned. See you guys. Good work, everybody.
Bye, everyone.